What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another ballazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was the overshadowed twin who mastered infinite clone evolution? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. Naruto was walking home from the academy trying to figure out how to do a bunchin. Most of the students have at the very least created one, while his always came out pathetic and sickly looking. As Naruto pondered this, he figured he could ask for help, but whom? The only person he could think of was Oji-san, but he was probably too busy to be bothered. Then again, he has insisted Naruto go see him if he ever needed help, so he changed directions and headed towards the Hokage Tower. Running towards the tower, Naruto noted that it was a beautiful sunny day with clear blue skies, which is normal in the land of fire but noteworthy nonetheless. It would be even better if the civilians stopped giving him the evil eye, but he was used to it and ignored it as he always did. He didn't know why he was so hated or alone, but he tried not to let it bother him. He tried. Besides, I have Gigi and Iruka-sensei when they're not busy, thought Naruto as he ran into the tower and soon made it to the door leading into the Hokage's office. He burst through the door shouting, "Hey Oji-san." The Sandame Hokage Sarutobi hears and looks up and smile as Naruto enter with his usual greeting. While he could wish the blonde would tone down the volume, he was always happy to see the boy, plus anything that kept him away from his paperwork was to be considered a blessing. The shinobi smile and ask in his gentle grandfather voice, "Ah Naruto, good to see you. How are you? Are you keeping up in your studies?" Naruto, as excited as always, said in a voice that was not quite shouting but was close, "I'm doing just fine Oji-san, but I seem to be having problems learning one of those techniques." "Oh," said the Hokage contemplatively, "and what technique is this?" "It's the Bunshin no Jutsu, Iruka-sensei taught us 2 weeks ago. Everyone in the class is able to create at least one, but even if I do create one, it comes out all pale and sickly." Naruto finished with a bit of embarrassment and anger in his voice, a bit out character for the normally enthusiastic boy. Being Hokage, along with a myriad of political reasons, the Sandame wasn't allowed to help Naruto as much as he would like, but he saw nothing wrong with helping him in this particular problem. So the Hokage told Naruto to perform the technique, and Naruto got into position, formed the proper signs, but as soon he started molding chakra, Sarutobi instantly knew what was wrong as chakra chaotically swirl around the boy. With a poof of smoke, a sickly-looking clone appeared lying on the floor. Sarutobi was well aware of what the problem was. Naruto already has a naturally large reservoir of chakra, something he inherited from his father, which lends itself to poor chakra control. But thanks to the Kyuubi no Kitsune, what control he has is shot, making it almost impossible for him to learn such a jutsu. The Sandame saw no way he could help the boy, unless he could give the blonde that particular jutsu, but then he'll have the council breathing down his neck. Looking over to Naruto and seeing the despondent look on his face, Sarutobi could think of no one else who deserves to have his dream come true, and Naruto's dream was to be a ninja and one day be Hokage. Was that not worth the ire of a couple of old fogies? Naruto watched as the man he called Gigi had a contemplative look on his face. He was afraid that the man was going to tell him that there was nothing that he could do, and that would be that. But the Hokage looked at him and said in a gentle yet firm voice, "I am going to give you a technique known as the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. You have too much chakra and not enough control to use the normal Bunshin. This jutsu is actually a Jonin-level jutsu due to the fact that it requires lots of chakra. However, I'm sure you can master it, but I am trusting you to use this jutsu responsibly and caution you not to overdo it." As Naruto let this sink in, he jumped up shouting, "Yeah! I get to learn a new technique. Databio." Sarutobi couldn't help but chuckle at the boy's spirit as he wrote the necessary instructions on a scroll before rolling it up and handing it to the blonde. As soon as the scroll touched his hand, Naruto was gone, leaving the words, "Thanks Gigi," hanging in the air, with Sarutobi almost swearing that Naruto has somehow learned his father's Hiraishin technique. The Sandame then assumed a more business-like demeanor as he clearly said, "Canary." Suddenly an Anbu with a vaguely canary-like mask appeared. It was hard to tell because of the cloak, but you got the sense that it was a woman. "Canary, I want you to keep an eye on Naruto, make sure he doesn't gravely harm himself, and if he overdoes it like I suspect, he might take him to the hospital if necessary. Dismiss." He finished as the Kunoichi vanished in search of her charge. He sighed as he contemplated how this event will stir the hornet's nest. then sigh again as he looked at his desk, or rather the endless paperwork on it. He wondered if Naruto would take the job if he knew of the evils of paperwork. Best not mention it. Canary quickly found her charge already reading the instructions of the jutsu. Canary knew the truth about Naruto, even his heritage, and she always felt that the way the boy was treated wasn't right. Sometimes she wondered why she stayed in a village whose people could be so ignorant and callous, before she reminded herself that not everyone was like that. Frankly, she didn't mind keeping an eye on the boy. Of all the missions she gets called on to do, this was certainly more pleasant. Canary laid back and rests as she watched Naruto go through the exercise. Canary was greatly interested in what just happened as she checked that the two were still alive. Shouldn't the clone have gone poof? And going by their reactions, this wasn't what they meant to happen. Canary decided to leave the deductions to the medic Nin as she carried Naruto and his twin to the hospital, and then made her report to the Hokage. Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage, often called the god of shinobi, and the professor, was very rarely confused, and the few times that he was Naruto was usually involved. So it was no surprise that in the confusing situation he finds himself in, Naruto is indeed involved. Having received Canary's report, he went to the hospital to hear what they had to say. "What can you tell me?" he firmly asks the head medic Nin that was reviewing Naruto's case. "As far as we can tell, Naruto has somehow created a permanent clone that is currently drawing in half his life force and stabilizing. If we take them more than a few meters from each other, their vitals rapidly drop. Ordinarily I would say this whole situation is impossible, but..." The medic was cut off as Sarutobi finished for him. "But Naruto has often demonstrated that he can make the impossible possible. Do you think that this may be an attempt by Naruto's prisoner to be free of the seal? We're not seal experts, but the seal remains untouched and there's not a hint of yokai in the girl. Begging your pardon, Hokage-sama, but what do you intend to do with the girl? Welcome her as a citizen of Konoha, and introduce her as Naruto's twin sister, of course," said the Hokage with a smile. Naruto was exhausted, like he ran laps around Konoha non-stop for days. He opened his eyes fearing what he'll see: blinding white room and medical equipment. Yep, he was in the hospital. Naruto hated the hospital. He couldn't stand being cooped up for so long, not to mention the spiteful nurses who seemed to make his treatment as painful as they can get away with. Naruto laid there pondering how exactly he got in this situation when Gigi arrived. The Sandaime wore a gentle and humorous smile as he said, "Ah, Naruto, you're awake. I do believe I told you not to overdo it, did I not?" At those words, Naruto remembered the events that led him here, and he looked at the third with an obvious question on his face. "What happened, Gigi?" "I did as the instructions said," and Naruto trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid as it was unnecessary. Sarutobi frowned slightly at this, for he too was in the dark and didn't like not knowing the reason for such things as this. "I'm afraid that we are not entirely sure ourselves, Naruto. The Kage Bunshin seems to have reacted with your Oiroke no Jutsu in a way that's unheard of. I recommend that you not use your Oiroke no Jutsu until we are sure that it's safe." In a lighter tone he added, "But I am happy to say that your twin sister should be okay." Naruto nodded at the old man's words before his mind hyper-focused on the two keywords of that statement: twin sister? Sarutobi chuckled inwardly at the boy's expression. "Yes, your twin sister," he stated as he gestured at the bed that was only a few feet to his right. Naruto gazed at the figure on the bed, a girl who would look just like him if not for the red hair and slightly smaller build. She even had the same whisker marks. "Well, I'll leave you to rest some more. I'm sure after being out for nearly a week you're not going to be up and running, though the doctors say you both should be well enough to leave in a few days." At that he left, leaving behind a dazed little boy who couldn't yet get over the fact that he had a sister. The Sandaime was pondering what to do with this current situation. The Hokage tried to protect Naruto as much as he possibly could, which isn't made any easier by the fact that Naruto looks very much like his father, and now his new twin sister looks very much his mother. It won't take long before people put two and two together and get four. As he continued to ponder this, there was a knock on his door and he bid them enter. The one who entered was a green-hair Kunoichi with purple eyes. She wore the standard Jonin uniform, but her vest was a deep shade of purple, as was the cloth of her Hite-8, which was wrapped around her neck. Sarutobi knew who she was, Hitomi Karen, also known as Anbu Canary. "What can I do for you, Hitomi-san?" Hitomi stepped forward, bowed, then said, "Hokage-sama, I request that I become the guardian of Naruto and his sister." She said this firmly and with determination. The Hokage was a little surprised and intrigued by her request. "And what has brought this on?" "Hokage-sama, I'm sure you have come to the same conclusion I myself have. Naruto's anonymity is threatened now that his sister has come into existence. The girl looks enough like her mother that with the two together people will talk. Minato's and Kushina's enemies will be more than happy to take their anger out on their children." Sarutobi wasn't expecting anyone to come to the same conclusion so soon, which meant it was only a matter of time before his fears were realized. "So you plan on taking them in and protecting them?" "More than that, Hokage-sama, I can only protect them for so long. I want to make them strong enough to protect themselves. Naruto has much potential and is determined to a fault to do what he sets out to do, and if the girl has the same personality, then I don't believe even the sky could stop them. Also, who else is going to teach the girl things that a girl needs to know?" Sarutobi thought on all that was said and could not fault the logic. At the rate things were going, Naruto's heritage would become public knowledge in a week. It would certainly give them a home with someone to care for them, and as Hitomi said, who else would teach the girl stuff? After careful consideration, he finally reached a decision. Sarutobi then stated in a formal manner, "Very well, I have decided, Hitomi Karen, to place Uzumaki Naruto and his twin sister under your protection. You will turn them into the finest shinobis you ever produce. You will assist shinobi and kunoichi training at the academy. By the power vested unto me as Hokage, I rank this as an A-rank mission due to duration. You shall receive payment weekly. Do you accept?" Hitomi was a bit surprised that the Hokage was turning this into a mission and was placing her in the academy, before realized that she can't protect Naruto if she is constantly on mission. She knew what she was getting herself into when she made the request, so with a look in her eyes that showed the old man the strength of the will of fire, she said, "I do." The red-haired girl stared into the mirror, finding it hard to believe she was now a girl. But she was always a girl. Technically her real self was sitting on the bed. Did that mean she wasn't real, that she was a fake? As far as she knew, she felt real, but she was just a clone gone wrong. She would just poof out of existence. She didn't want to just go poof, she wanted to live. For the first time in her very short life, the confused little girl cried as she contemplated her existence. Naruto, not understanding what his new sister was going through, went to her and wrapped her in his arms. It felt kind of weird hugging a sister he never had, especially since she was technically him in some respects, but he got over it and focused on comforting his precious people. As the girl calmed down, Naruto asked, "Are you all right?" The girl gave a hesitant nod. "That's good, I don't know what's wrong, but being a girl can't be that bad, can it?" The girl's tone signified she was slightly depressed as she responded, "That's not what I'm upset about. I'm a clone, I'm not real, I'll just go poof." Naruto simply stared at her as he said, "Gigi-san says you're real." The girl seemed to perk up at that. "Besides, I'll never let anything happen to my Imouto." "Databio," he finished with his trademark grin. "He called me Imouto," the girl thought as she realized she now had family, albeit small, but family nonetheless. She wrapped him in a hug of her own as they both cried tears of joy for finding the family they have yearned for so long. The next day, Hitomi arrives to see Naruto and his twin, who decided to call herself Naruko because it was close enough to the original to prevent confusion, sitting on one of the beds chatting. "How are you, Naruto-kun?" "I'm doing great," he said excitably. "And what may I call you, young Uzumaki?" she asked the girl. "I'm Uzumaki Naruko, and I'm doing just fine," she said as excitably as her brother. "That's good to hear. I am Hitomi Karen and I will be your new guardian." The Hokage marveled at how the simplest of things can ruin a well-laid plan. The Sandame was no fool. He realized the futility in keeping the truth of Naruto's heritage from him, as well as the secret of the creature within him. He had hoped that such things would come to light when the boy was older and mature enough to handle it, but events have conspired against him. He now finds himself before the council having to explain these events and decisions concerning Naruto and Naruko. "I'm sure you have heard things." He simply stated he didn't know how they may have heard things, but this is a ninja village. It would be stupid to assume they didn't have ways. Allow me to confirm or disprove what you have heard. About a week ago, I have given Naruto permission to learn the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, stated the Hokage calmly. As soon as he said that, the council erupted in noise. mostly the civilian sides, but there were a few from minor ninja clans. The Hokage held up his hands in an attempt to gain order. They eventually calmed down and a civilian merchant spoke up. "Hokage-sama, I must question why you would teach the cold glance in the Hokage's eyes reminded him who he was talking to, and he immediately switched tracks. That boy's such a jutsu when he's not even a genin yet. As I have said before, I gave Naruto permission to learn the jutsu, I never said I taught him. As to why I gave it to him, Naruto had come to me requesting help with his Bunshin no Jutsu. I have come to the conclusion that Naruto simply had too much chakra to effectively use the Bunshin no Jutsu. So I gave him the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu since I determined that he had more than enough chakra to safely use it. Any more questions?" The council was quiet. Most of the civilians were contemplating how they didn't want the damn demon getting stronger, but they wisely said nothing. The ninja clans were also contemplating the advantage. If Naruto can safely produce a couple of clones at age 8, imagine what he could do when he's older. Getting back to the subject at hand, I did give Naruto the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, and he managed to learn it in that day. Some eyebrows went up at that, but nobody said anything. However, Naruto had his clone use his own Oiroge no Jutsu. The Hokage was also glad since this allowed him to forbid Naruto from using that jutsu again. He might actually listen this time. We're not sure what happened, but we believed the Oiroge no Jutsu had a strange reaction with the clone, causing it to become a permanent, flesh and blood, female clone of Naruto. That statement was nearly enough to cause a riot on the civilian side. Even some of the ninja clans lost their composure. The loud shouting ended when the Sandame released enough killing intent to cause a weaker man to piss himself, which by the tinkling sound may have happened. The Sandame spoke in a cold, calm voice that broke no argument. "You will sit and act calmly and rationally. The next person to cause an outburst in this chamber shall be dealt with." There was no misunderstanding in those words as the members of the council complied with his wishes. Good, now Naruto and his twin Naruko have been placed under the guardianship of Hitomi Karen. I have also felt that it is time to reveal the truth about Naruto and Naruko's heritage. Most of the council did not understand the significance of that statement, but some of the major clans did. It was surprisingly Aburame Shibi who spoke, his clan being most notable for their neutral stance and use of the Kakaichu. "Why have you decided that now is the best time to reveal this information, Hokage-sama?" he said, steady and stoic as ever. The Hokage response was simple. She looked just like her mother. That seemed to be more than enough. What followed was the revelations of shocking truths to the rest of the council as they set a date to tell the village. Sarutobi could only hope that once again he was doing the right thing. Hitomi was in Naruto's apartment gathering anything she considered to be of use. She couldn't help but think that no child should have to live alone like this. She'd toss another useless shirt into the growing pile of trash as she thought about the first meeting a few days ago. "That's good to hear. I am Hitomi Karen and I will be your new guardian." Both Uzumakis questioned in a puzzled tone. "Guardian?" Hitomi put on a smile as she explained, "From now on you two will be living with me?" The twins seemed excited about the prospect, but they couldn't understand why they were suddenly going to live with a stranger, so the simple response was, "Why?" Hitomi stepped up to Naruko and held her, prompting her to wonder why it felt so familiar. Nobody should have to live alone. Suddenly Naruko remembered, the voice, the hair, the hug, "Your canary." Naruko shouted as she remembered times when Canary had saved her, and by her she meant Naruto, from drunken villagers from time to time. She even comforted her when she was at her lowest. "I have personally asked the Hokage if I may become your guardian so that I may take care of you and teach you how to become great shinobis." Naruto and Naruko's mind were churning from that deluge. Not only was someone accentually accepting them as part of their family, but it happened to be Canary. And she wanting to teach them how to be ninjas, that was just the icing on a very good cake. They both jumped Hitomi, causing her to nearly lose her balance in their enthusiasm, laughing all the while. Hitomi sighed as she threw another shirt into the pile of trash and looked at the clock as it read 3 in the afternoon. The twins were to be coming home today, but before they do, the Hokage wanted a word with them and she knew what it was. She finished up for now wanting to be there for the twins when the truth was revealed to them. Naruto, Naruko, Hitomi, and Sarutobi all sat in the hospital room. The twins, after greeting the Hokage, calmed down upon seeing the serious look on his face. "Naruto, Naruko, I am going to reveal secrets to you that I have been keeping. First off, I need you to realize that these secrets were meant to protect you, and I did only what I felt was right, do you understand? The twins nodded their head. They didn't know what the secret was, but if it was to protect them, they didn't see anything bad about it. I wanted to tell you this when you were older, but certain events pushed my hand. He said this while giving Naruto a pointed look. On the day you were born, the Kyuubi no Kitsune attacked the village. Naruto and Naruto nodded as they knew this part, but what they didn't know surprised them. The textbooks say that the Yondaime defeated the Kyuubi and died in the process. This is not true. The Kyuubi is a being of immense chakra and cannot be permanently killed by any means we know of. The only way the Kyuubi could be stopped was to seal it into another living person. Both Naruto and Naruto could see where this was going, but were not quite ready to accept that reality. The Yondaime gave his life to seal the Kyuubi into you, Naruto. The Sandaime let this sink in. He could almost see the twins' mind trying to process everything they just heard. The twins were indeed thinking hard, as everything they had to endure started making sense. Finally, it was Naruto who asked, "Why?" Sarutobi sighed. It was times like this that he felt he would be more comfortable on the battlefield or even, once, doing paperwork. The seal that the Yondaime used could only be performed on a newborn baby, and you were one of the few babies born that night. Also, Namikaze Minato would not be able to allow other people to sacrifice their child if he himself was not willing. Naruto thought on Sarutobi's last statement before it finally dawned on him what was said. "No way!" he shouted in wide-eye astonishment. Naruto's eyes expanded as well as she realized what it all meant. Sarutobi smiled as he confirmed it for them. "Yes, the Yondaime Hokage Namikaze Minato is your father. He believed in you, otherwise he never would have put the Kyuubi into you. He wanted you to be viewed as a hero, but people can be ignorant. Many people have lost family and friends to the Kyuubi attack, but rather than letting their anger out in a less destructive way, they took it out on you, the Kyuubi's jailer. I tried to protect you as much as I could, but as I have an entire village to run, there was only so much I could do." The twins could see that Sarutobi was upset for not being there for them, so they hugged him. "It's okay, Gigi," said Naruto, "you tried your best." "Yeah," shouted Naruto. "All we have to do is show these people we're not that damn fox." Databio. Sarutobi just couldn't help laughing out loud and was soon joined by Hitomi and the twins. The laughing helped to relieve tension and allowed Sarutobi to realize he made the right choice. As the laughter died down, Naruto asked, "Hey, what about our mother?" "Ah yes, your mother Uzumaki Kushina was a fine kunoichi, one of our best. Sadly, she perished in the Kyuubi attack. This is actually one of the reasons I am telling you all this. Your mother and father were great ninjas, but they had many enemies who would have no qualms about harming you for something your parents did. So I kept your heritage a secret so as not to garner enemy attention. However, upon the birth of Naruto, that has become more difficult." "How so?" said Naruto, who was a little peeved that it may be your fault. Sarutobi removed something from within his robes, a picture, and handed it to them. "This is a picture of your mother and father." They looked at the picture, then at each other and back and forth several times. They could immediately see the similarities. Minato had blonde spiky hair like Naruto, and the same blue eyes. Kushina had the same blood-red hair that Naruto had. She seemed to have gotten her eyes from her father, but the face was definitely their mother's. Despite Naruto's similarities to Minato, no one has looked too deeply into it. But now that Naruto is here, her similarities to your mother may be more than enough for the truth to come out. Which is why you will be staying with Hitomi-san. She has chosen to protect you and to help you protect yourselves. Also, in a few days I will be announcing to the village the truth about your heritage. The Kyuubi will remain a secret to those who don't know unless you wish otherwise." The twins looked at each other before saying in unison, "We'll give it some thought." "Very well," said the Hokage as he stood up. "I must be getting back to the office, but I am very proud of how you handle this, and I definitely see you both as heroes." Naruto and Naruto's mind was still spinning from the overload of info, but their eyes showed even more determination than ever before. "I'll prove to everyone that I'll be the greatest Hokage ever," they both shouted in their mind, but the thought seemed to echo in the other's voice. They looked at each other and said, "Did I just hear you in my mind?" Naruto and Naruto didn't understand why they could suddenly hear each other's voice in their head. They vowed to keep it silent for now. The last thing they wanted was to stay in the hospital any longer. Telling them that something strange was happening would have likely kept them there for a while. Hitomi had acquired some clothes for Naruto as Naruto wore his t-shirt and orange shorts. Hitomi had been appalled when she was in Naruto's apartment. She now knew why he always wore that t-shirt and those shorts. She knew she was going to have to go shopping to get Naruto a new wardrobe, but apparently Naruto needed one too. As Hitomi led them towards the shopping district, Naruto and Naruto were silently communicating. They talked about everything the Sandaime had discussed early. It was hard to believe that their idol the Yondaime was actually their father. Then there was the issues about the fox. Truth be told, they didn't want any more secrets, but they were afraid of the reactions of their peers. They didn't want to lie about it, but they craved acceptance, and telling about the fox may bring about the exact opposite. They soon arrived at a clothing store and walked in. The store owner looked at Naruto and looked like he was about to kick him out, but was stopped by two things. Firstly, Hitomi was glaring at him in a way that said he'll have better chance trying to wrestle with a tiger. Secondly, he looked at Naruto and felt something familiar about her, but he interrupted that thought before it had a chance to go somewhere. He allowed them in, but that didn't stop him from sending Naruto a few glares and Naruto a few confused glances. Hitomi sent Naruto to the boys section to pick out a few outfits, and Naruto ran off excited at the prospect of receiving a gift, even if it was just clothes. That thought alone made Hitomi's heart wrench, and she led Naruto to the girls section as she held up a pair of panties. Now Naruto was a clone of Naruto, meaning all her memories were of being Naruto, a boy, so it's only understandable that Naruto still see herself as a boy. Hitomi seemed to understand what Naruto was going through as she gently said, "Look Naruto, I know this may be a little difficult for you, but you are a girl. While I don't expect you to wear girly clothes," she said this while indicating a dress with flowers, lace, and enough pink to make one sick, "I do expect you to wear girl clothes." She emphasized this, pointing to a shirt and shorts outfit like Naruto's, only slightly more feminine. Naruto relented, insisting that the outfit wasn't as bad as the dress. If she were being honest with herself, she would admit that she really liked it. Hitomi allowed them to pick their own outfits, but she made sure they didn't go overboard on the orange. After the clothes shopping was done, they went to a few more shops to pick up essential stuff. All along the way they were getting strange looks. There were still some glares here and there, but people would give them familiar glances before desperately denying it. Naruto and Naruto were relived to finally make it to Hitomi's home, especially after such a long day. It was bigger than Naruto's apartment, but not too big, the perfect size for an adult and two 8-year-olds. She showed them around the house, which was now their home as much as hers. She even figured it would be for the best to place them in the same room for the time being. For one of the few times in their very short life, Naruto and Naruto felt truly relaxed. It had been a long day, and dinner was much appreciated by the twins, especially since Hitomi made ramen. The twins quickly ascertained that while it wasn't as good as Ichiraku's, it was a close second. After dinner was over, Naruto decided to ask a question that's been bugging her. "Hitomi One-chan?" Naruto said, using the honorific that Hitomi had insisted they used after it slipped out of Naruto's mouth earlier. "Yes, Naruto-chan? I've been thinking, if I'm a clone then I don't have the fox in me, do I?" Hitomi gave a little sigh before saying, "I have talked to the Hokage about this. While you do not hold the Kyuubi no Kitsune within you, your connection with Naruto links you to the Kyuubi as well. We are not yet sure what results may come of this, hopefully nothing. Or maybe something." Naruto telepathically sent to Naruto, implying that this telepathy was a result of the connection or Kyuubi, possibly both. They all decided that it was time to move off of this uncomfortable subject, as they talked about nothing in particular. They simply enjoyed each other's company. Amino Iruka tried to convince himself that he wasn't worried about Naruto, that he was merely curious to his student's absence. Though he realized to convince himself such would mean that he was lying to himself. Iruka was very worried about Naruto. It has been over a week since Naruto was placed into the hospital, and so far he has not heard a thing. He tried to visit him, but only the Hokage and someone named Hitomi Karen was allowed in. He restrained himself from going to the Hokage, but the more time passed the more he feared the worst. Finally giving in, he goes to the Hokage requesting to see Naruto. The Hokage informs him that they were let out of the hospital and were now with this Hitomi Karen. Iruka wondered about the The Hokage mentioned but passed it off as a slip of the tongue. Iruka headed towards Hitomi's home by aid of the address the Sandame had given him. He finally arrives at her house, knocks and waits a few moments before he was struck dumb by the beautiful woman who opened the door. It was a good thing for him that she spoke first since he was trying to remember how to speak. "Ah, you must be Amino Iruka," stated Hitomi, who had done research on the academy instructors considering she'll soon be working there. Iruka, who finally managed to find his voice, stuttered, "Why? Yes, and you must be Hitomi Karen. Call me Hitomi." She then smiled as she said, "I assume you're here to see Naruto." After getting a nod of affirmation, she lets him enter and lead him into the living room. Hitomi sits down in a comfy chair and beckons Iruka to do the same. Hitomi quietly stares at Iruka before saying, "Has the Hokage informed you of what led to Naruto's hospitalization?" Iruka was caught off guard with the question, no he hasn't. What he left unsaid, all very much like to know, didn't need to be said. "From what I understand, you have taught your class the Bunshin no Jutsu, correct?" Hitomi stated more than questioned. "Yes, I have," confirmed Iruka. But Naruto was having trouble with the jutsu. Again she stated. Iruka didn't see what this had to do with Naruto's hospitalization but sighed as he answered. "Yeah. I tried to help him, but there is only so much I can do, and no matter how much aid I give him he just can't seem to grasp the technique." This caused Hitomi to smile as she could see that he really did care about Naruto. Naruto realized that he was going to need help performing the technique, so he went to the Hokage for help. The Hokage saw what the problem was. Naruto naturally has a large amount of chakra, that plus his prisoner has left him with very little chakra control. It would be almost impossible for Naruto to perform a Bunshin even if he had some control. Iruka took that in and it made sense, so much so that he wonders why he hadn't realized it sooner. Hitomi continued the tale. The Hokage had determined that he had more than enough chakra to safely perform the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto had mastered the jutsu with no ill effects, but after having a clone use his Oiroke no Jutsu, the effects caused his and the clone's hospitalization. Iruka was following her right up to the point she mentioned hospitalizing Naruto and his clone. Here he was completely lost. He was about to comment when he heard laughter and running. Looking over, he noticed Naruto and some girl go running by without noticing them. He was relieved that Naruto was okay, but who was the girl and why did she look so familiar? Hitomi was still looking in the direction the twins went as she said, "As you can see, Naruto is fine, as is his sister Naruko." That last statement caused Iruka to freeze. She wasn't even sure he was breathing. The clone had stabilized and has become Naruto's flesh and blood sister. The med nins are still trying to figure out how this miracle is even possible. Iruka just sat there as he tried to work this out, but one thing kept coming back to the forefront of his mind. She looked so familiar. Why, it's almost as if he's seen her before, but how can that be? Suddenly he remembered. It was a vague memory he had of meeting the Yondaimi's wife when he was still an academy student. It's a marvel at how the human mind can ignore the obvious except when faced with irrefutable proof. Iruka's mind went into overdrive as he quickly put together the facts. "So that's why they are here," said Iruka in understanding. Hitomi immediately caught his meaning as she responded, "It is part of the reason. I do have my own personal reason for wanting them. I assume they know the truth. It was deemed necessary, besides they had a right to know the whole truth." Iruka nodded at her words and then said, "I would like to speak with them before I go." Hitomi called the twins into the room and their first response was to excitedly shout, "Iruka-sensei." Iruka chuckled at that and said, "I'm glad you're okay, Naruto, and it's good to meet you, Naruko." As he said this he knelt down and hugged them, which was a surprise since he never done this before. "I see you found a home and you mastered the Kage Bunshin. I'm very proud of you." Naruto and Naruko looked at him in shock. "You're proud of us?" With a smile Iruka said, "You're my favorite student, why wouldn't I be?" Then he dropped his voice to a stage whisper, "Don't tell anyone I said that, can't go showing favoritism." A confused Naruto said, "But we're the dead last of the class, why would we be your favorite students?" Naruko, you remind me of myself when I was an academy student. I lost my parents to the Kyuubi, so like you I'm an orphan. People were too absorbed in their own lives to give any notice to an orphan. I was pushed aside, ignored, and lonely, so I started acting out much like you do simply to gain people attention. I eventually learned that simply being me and true to myself was all I needed to do. I hope you will come to realize this as well." At the last statement he tousled their hair as he stood up. "Well, I'll leave now, but later we could go to Ichiraku." The twins, who were so caught up in their sensei's little speech, starting jumping around and stating how they couldn't wait. Iruka left and the twins went off to bed, yet sleep would not claim them just yet. So much has happened in so little amount of time that a normal person would have gone insane by now. It was Naruko who initialized the telepathic conversation. "Hey, Naruto." She was understandably still getting used to things. "Yeah," was his one-word response. "I've been thinking about this all night, and I think we should reveal the Kyuubi." I think you're right. Like Iruka-sensei said, we have to be true to ourselves. Also, if we make any friends, I don't want to deceive them. Yeah, all we have to do is be ourselves. And I show everyone that I be the greatest Hokage ever." "What do you mean I'm going to be Hokage? I never heard of a girl Hokage, besides there can only be one." Maybe not. There's no rule stating that there can only be one Hokage, is there? I guess not, but can we really do that? Why not? Alright, we'll be the first ever Hokage twins. As the days pass, rumors circulated and grew without the help of truth and fact to douse it. 3 days after the truth was revealed to the two Uzumakis, the Hokage calls a mandatory assembly. The entire village goes, leaving only those whose work was too important. Sarutobi stood before those who have assembled, civilians and shinobi, adults and children. He couldn't help but think that this can go wrong so many ways, but he felt that he was doing the right thing. As Hokage, he oftentimes have to make decisions that is for the good of the village, whether or not they feel like the right thing to do. This, however, was something that had to be done, something that should have been done sooner. As Sarutobi spoke to the villagers, he began to tell the truth. He spoke of how the beloved Yondaime Hokage saved them all from the Kyuubi, something they all knew. What wasn't known to the children and very few adults was that the Yondaime did not destroy the Kyuubi, but sacrificed his life to seal the Kyuubi into a baby boy. What was not known by most of the assembly was that the baby boy was in fact the son of the Yondaime Hokage. The last statement had left a lot of people quite stunned and a lot of children quite confused. That is until the Hokage decided to mention the boy's name was Uzumaki Naruto. As that cleared things up, it left most kids in stunned disbelief, particularly Naruto's classmates. One dark-haired, pale-skinned brooding boy was convinced that this was some stupidly elaborate joke. Sarutobi went on to say how Naruto was not the Kyuubi, but was in fact their savior for keeping the Kyuubi at bay. As he talked, he noticed that many of the people wore looks of disbelief at his words, but a fair share seemed to actually be listening. He was disappointed in those that disregarded him, yet surprised by those who took his words to heart. The Hokage wrapped up his speech and could only hope that things worked out. Naruto and Naruko, who didn't want to be anywhere near the assembly, was just returning from their visit to their favorite spot on Hokage Monument. As they walked through the village, they noted how they were getting odd looks. Some of them were the more familiar glares of hatred, but they also seemed to be receiving questioning looks, maybe even kindly. The twins didn't know what to make of it. It's a sad thing to say that they have gotten used to being seen as monsters. They didn't like it but were used to it. As they wandered with no real destination in mind, they came across a field that was occupied by two boys laying on the ground and staring at the sky. The twins immediately identified them as Choji and Shikamaru, two boys in their class. Choji was the first to notice them as he sat up and said, "Hey Naruto." Upon hearing the name of the person who was currently on their minds, Shikamaru tilted his head and focused on Naruto, which for him was the equivalent of sitting up and shouting, "Hey Choji, Shikamaru, how is it going?" Naruto shouted excitedly, this being the first time since the incident he's seen a classmate. Due to the situation, Naruto was a little more apprehensive, so didn't speak up. Shikamaru was bothered by what he had heard during the assembly, and while he trusted the Hokage, he rather hear it from the source. Standing up, he asks, "Is it true?" Not sure what he was asking, Naruto asked his own question, "Is what true?" "Everything we heard at the assembly, your parents, the Kyuubi, is it true?" Both Uzumakis bowed their head, afraid that they were going to lose a friend before they really had a chance. "Yes," was his reply in a voice so small it even surprised him. Both twins were quite shocked when they heard him sigh and say, "This village is full of morons. How anyone could see you as a demon is just beyond me." The twins were glad, for while he didn't exactly say it, they felt that he accepted them. Moving on, who are you? He said this while tilting his head towards Naruto to indicate who he was speaking of. Oh yeah, this is my twin sister Naruto, said Naruto, once again excited. Said Shikamaru, the disbelief in his voice quite evident. Last I checked you were an only child. Naruto and Naruto proceeded to tell them everything that happened since the incident, even telling them about the special connection and eventual goal. Shikamaru just stared at them before saying, you know, for anybody else I would say that everything you've told me is impossible, but for you it just seems to work. He placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. I'll support you, both of you. He finished looking at Naruto. I'll support you too, shouted Choji, who was snacking on a bag of chips throughout the whole exposition. Naruto, who couldn't stop the few tears that fell from her eyes, hugged Shikamaru as she softly said, thank you. Naruto was also trying to hold back his tears and was a little more successful. Shikamaru was surprised as he wasn't used to getting this level of affection from anyone but his mom, but he realized how much his few words truly meant to the two, so he hugged her back. They talked a little while longer before splitting up after making plans to meet again outside of the academy. As they walked, they realized that had the full truth not come out, things might not have turned out like this. They were aware that there would be negative consequences too, but they were sure it will be a price worth paying. After the meeting they had with Shikamaru, the twins found themselves besieged by villagers apologizing for their actions. The vast majority of them seemed quite insincere. Some even seemed to be choking on their words. While they accepted the apologies with a smile on their face, they knew to be cautious around these people. The shock came from those who seemed to be very sincere and didn't expect forgiveness for their actions. Naruto and Naruto decided to split up as they walked. Among several reasons, they wanted to test the limits of their telepathic connection. As fate would have it, the two had another encounter awaiting them. Naruto was just picking herself off the ground after having been knocked down by something moving fast. Looking ahead, she quickly ascertains that it was the boy with the shaggy black hair and thick eyebrows picking himself off the ground. The boy bows before the girl and said, please excuse me, I was going too fast and wasn't paying attention to where I was going. It's all right, no harm done, says Naruto as she dusts off her clothes. The boy looks up to see a girl with straight red hair, probably only a year younger than him. He was instantly smitten. This pretty young tomboy had captured his heart and he didn't even know her name. My name is Rock Lee, what's yours? He stammered out, suddenly feeling flustered. Excitedly she shouted, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I mean Naruto. Man, I still can't get used to that. She was a little embarrassed about her slip-up. Naruto, pondered Lee. Isn't he the Yondaime's son? He asked, remembering the assembly. Naruto nodded her head as she answered, he's technically my twin brother. Wow, so you're the daughter of the Yondaime, wow. What do you mean technically? Well, I'm actually a clone of Naruto. Something went wrong with the Kage Bunshin and here I am. I'm flesh and blood like you and I won't go poof. Wow, to be able to use the Kage Bunshin no jutsu at your age, you must be at the top of your class, said Lee with a bit of envy. Naruto hung her head a bit as she said, actually we're the dead last of our class. Lee was stunned both by the fact that someone of her skill level would be dead last, but also for finding a kindred spirit. I am the dead last of my class as well. Really? Asked Naruto, afraid that he may just be humoring her. Yes, there is something wrong with my chakra coils. I am unable to perform even the simplest of ninja techniques. To make matters worse, I'm all thumbs when it comes to weapons. So I decided that I don't need ninjutsu or weapons, for I'll become a ninja with nothing but taijutsu, he finished with a shout. That's great, train hard because I'll need you to be the greatest taijutsu expert when I become Hokage. Huh? Said a confused Lee. I may be the dead last, but I won't give up on my dream of becoming the greatest Hokage ever. What say we show them all what these dead last can do? She finished by sticking out her hand. Lee smiled as he took her hand and they stood there for a moment, understanding each other on a level that most could never hope to reach. Eventually they separated and went their own way, yet Lee couldn't help but think how pretty she was. Naruto couldn't help but rejoice in making another friend. Life has been so good for them since the incident, it almost seemed like a dream. It having been a full day, Naruto decided it was time to head home. Naruto, however, was not having as good a time. After having gotten 20 feet away from Naruto, he felt the connection was severed. It was a strange feeling, and he figured that was how far the connection would last. It wasn't too long afterwards that he came across a girl around his age practicing throwing kunais and shuriken. He watched as nearly every weapon reached its mark. She missed a few, but the ones that hit did with surprising accuracy. "Whoa, you're good," shouted Naruto. The girl noticed him and said, "Thanks. I've been practicing for as long as I can remember, but I need to get better if I want to become a weapon mistress." "I'm Tenten, who are you?" "Uzumaki Naruto, nice to meet you." The smile on Tenten's face immediately turned into a frown, and Naruto could tell this wasn't going to end well. "So you're Uzumaki Naruto, the Kyuubi no Kitsune." Naruto wanted to convince her she was wrong, but he met people like this before and you can't talk sense into it all. "You're the person responsible for the death of my parents," shouted Tenten, and though Naruto knew he was not at fault, the words stung nonetheless. "All that time I spent in the orphanage, everything I had to endure, your fault." Tears leaked out of Tenten's eyes as she fingered a kunai, looking as if she was seriously considering impaling him with it. "I suggest you stay out of my sight, because if I ever see you again I may kill you," she finished in an eerily quiet voice. As she finished that, she turned and stomped off, leaving an upset and confused Naruto. Naruto had had people angrily ranting at him about the death of some people being his fault, but this was different. It was as if she was blaming him not only for the death of her parents but something that happened to her personally. Naruto didn't know if it was the right decision, but he wanted to help the girl, to find what she's really angry about, and if possible be there for her. For now he decided that it's time to head home. As Naruto got within 15 feet of the house, the connection re-established itself and they started talking the day they had. They rejoice in making 3 friends in one day and questioned the puzzle that was Tenten. Eventually they winded down, for school the next day would prove to be interesting. Hitomi and the twins walked to the ninja academy. Today would be her first day in instructing shinobis in training for the next several years. Should be fun. The twins were apprehensive for obvious reasons. They were glad to be accepted by 2 of their classmates, but that didn't tell them how others would react. Hitomi knew that Iruka planned on introducing Naruto, so she timed their arrival so that they wouldn't be late but be the last ones to enter. As they walked in, they indeed found that all of the twins' classmates were present. The class recognized Naruto, who was getting some very odd looks, but the question was obvious on their face as they looked at Naruto and Hitomi. As Iruka said hi to Naruto and sent him to his seat, he had Naruto stand before the class as he prepared to introduce her. "Class, may I have your attention?" he said, more as a formality as he already had their attention. "I'd like you to meet Uzumaki Naruto. Due to circumstances that will be covered later, Naruto now has a twin sister. Please be nice to her," he finished as he sent Naruto to find a seat. The class was abuzz with murmurs as everyone talked about this latest development in the Chronicles of Naruto. Meanwhile, the seat next to her brother was taken, so she went up to an empty seat next to a boy with a large trench coat that hid part of his face and sunglasses. She believed his name was Shino. "Hey Shino, right mind if I sit here?" Shino slightly turned his head away from her as he said, "Whatever." Naruto was a little dismayed as she sat, for she assumed his attitude was due to the whole Kyuubi thing, though she did wonder why his face turned a little red. Meanwhile, Iruka had everyone settled down as Hitomi introduced herself. "Good morning class, my name Hitomi Karen, you will call me Hitomi Sensei. From now on I will be assisting Iruka Sensei in your ninja training. I expect to see good results from you all." As she said that, her eyes spanned across the students and seemed to linger on 2 particular students. As that was done, Iruka got into the lesson plan for the day. With whole truth now revealed, it was Iruka's duty to fill in the details. History books were going to have to be rewritten, and teachings retaught. As he moved off the academics and on to the practicals, he stated that they were practicing the Bunshin no Jutsu and started calling them alphabetically. Each student showed what they could do, and for most they could only make 3 at a time. Sasuke impressed everyone by making 5, but nobody was expecting Iruka to call up both Uzumakis. Hitomi has been practicing with the twins just to see what they could do and was disgusted with just how little they were taught, but she was impressed with the number of clones they could produce. 5 ACH was their limit, but still rather impressive for 8-year-olds. She has instructed them that until she says otherwise they limit their clones to 2. So as the duo went to the front of the class to perform their jutsu, their classmates were sure they already knew what to expect. Shikamaru hid his smirk under a veil of indifference since he definitely knew what to expect. Naruto, you may begin, said Iruka. In sync they put their hands in the proper sign and said loudly, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The class was quite stunned to see 6 Uzumakis rather than 2. It was Sasuke who broke the silence by saying, Kage Bunshin. And Sakura who followed up by asking, isn't that a high-level forbidden jutsu? There's no way the Dobi could do something like this. This must be a trick, were the emo boys' thoughts. Yes, Sakura, that was a forbidden jutsu, and Naruto and Naruto are the only ones in this class who can safely use this jutsu aside from myself and Hitomi-sensei. Naruto and Naruto has vast quantities of chakra, more so than anyone in this room. This allows them to easily use chakra-consuming techniques such as the Kage Bunshin, however this gives them very poor chakra control. They are unable to utilize simple ninja techniques that only require a small amount of chakra such as the Bunshin. They will have to learn advanced chakra control techniques in order to learn the simple jutsus they will need throughout their ninja career. Hitomi was impressed. Not only has Iruka shown the class that Naruto and Naruto were not the dead last they thought they were, but he has shown the twins their strengths. He kept the most of the students from getting jealous by showing that it wasn't all advantageous, and he kept the twins from getting a swelled head by showing them their weakness. Also, he incorporated all of this into a lesson. Iruka was a true teacher. Sasuke was currently training in one of the training grounds of the empty Uchiha district, trying to sort out his feelings. To say he was confused was putting it mildly. He always thought that being an Uchiha made him better than others, that no one in his class could be better than him. It was this attitude that caused him to look down on Naruto and belittle him. To his way of thinking, Naruto was just an orphan brat from a no-name clan who didn't know his place. But the revelation that Naruto's parents were actually 2 of the greatest shinobis the village has ever produced, and that Naruto was not as dead last as he would like for him to be, immediately disabused him of this thought. It had occurred to Sasuke that in terms of chakra Naruto could very well be as strong as a Chunin, and as he grow older his chakra capacity would grow with him. If Naruto ever becomes an effective ninja, he could very well become the strongest ninja in the village, just like his father before him. He had to get stronger. If he couldn't even surpass the dead last no matter who his parents were, then how could he expect himself to be strong enough to stop him? He didn't care about Naruto's lineage, he didn't care about the Kyuubi, none of that mattered. What mattered was how strong he was compared to Naruto. But to say that Sasuke was confused was putting it mildly. For an unfathomable reason he simply could not explain, he couldn't stop thinking that Uzumaki Naruto was quite cute. Sakura laid on her bed, her mind currently and understandably occupied by the 2 people who were the talk of the town, Naruto and Naruto. She had no idea what to think, as it certainly puts a new spin on the so-called failure and annoyance. She always seen the evidence of how Naruto was treated, but it never seemed to be a big deal until now. The more she thought about it, the more it galled her to realize that she was no better than the bullies who used to bother her simply because of her forehead. She would constantly make fun of him and hit him when all he wanted was to be her friend. It brought tears to her eyes as she realized how much she hurt him simply for what? Why was she always treating Naruto that way? She had to think deeply to come up with an answer. Sakura was a smart girl and would be the smartest person in her class if not for Shikamaru, and she realized the answer was several sources. It was mostly a combination of peer pressure and her devotion towards Sasuke. Since Sasuke always looked down on Naruto, she figured that she could garner his favor by treating Naruto as she has. Was that right? Was Sasuke always being mean to Naruto? Come to think of, has Sasuke ever been nice to anyone? These questions pulsed through her head as she was coming to a startling conclusion concerning her crush. Sakura knew that she was going to have to reevaluate how she looked at people, particularly Sasuke. But one thing was for certain, she owed Naruto an apology. Shikamaru was a bona fide genius, but to look at him one would never notice, considering that he is also the laziest person in Konoha. Yet that suited him just fine, as to be seen as anything else would just be troublesome as far as he is concerned. Despite his lazy nature, Shikamaru loved puzzles and games that challenge the mind, and the only puzzles challenging enough were often enough people. Naruto was one of the most challenging he had ever come across. Considering the way people treated him and all the secrecy that surrounded him, Naruto was indeed a suitable challenge for the young Nara. At the time of the assembly, Shikamaru already had an inkling of the truth. The speech given by the Hokage merely confirmed it. Yet having the truth confirmed didn't ease his concern for Naruto. As he put the pieces together, he was starting to get a broader understanding of Naruto and why he behaved the way he did. Needless to say, this didn't place the citizens of Konoha in a good light as far as he was concerned. Just to further confirm the truth, he questioned Naruto after he happened by, and through that conversation he was able to see the pain on Naruto's face at the possibility of rejection. He was also surprised, though not very, at meeting Naruto's clone twin sister Naruko. He couldn't help but say how so Naruto that was. Shikamaru may be lazy, but he was far from heartless, so in his own way he forged a friendship with the twins and said that he would support them. As he, the twins, and Choji went their own way, he couldn't help but think, being friends with those blondes is going to be so troublesome. A small smile spread across his face, but maybe it's worth it. However, not everyone was so accepting of Naruto's situation. Yamanaka Ino, a fellow blonde classmate of Naruto's, wasn't dealing so well, knowing that he housed the demon that very nearly destroyed Konoha. Logic tried to convince her that there was no way that the dead last loser was a demon. But fear and lack of understanding overruled logic and convinced her to keep her distance from Naruto. Choji's feelings towards Naruto was almost the exact opposite of Ino's. Choji had no belief whatsoever that Naruto was the Kyuubi. Though it scared him that the Kyuubi still exist, he bore Naruto no ill will. Him and Naruto have hung out before a few times but never really got together as friends. He didn't know why. Maybe it's time I ask Naruto if he wants to hang out more, was Choji's current train of thought. Hinata couldn't help but think about Naruto, the boy who she has admired since she first met him. He was her inspiration, all she strived to be. She knew that she was shy and had almost no confidence, but there was something about Naruto that made her want to better herself. She would always manage to gain just enough confidence to get near him, but when it came to speaking, her confidence plummets to near zero. Though after hearing the truth about Naruto, her admirations for the boy skyrocketed to the point one may call it love. To realize that Naruto had been a hero protecting Konoha since birth from the dreaded Kyuubi no Kitsune was mind-blowing for the young girl. And it irked her to no end that the citizens of Konoha would treat the very protector of Konoha in such a way. Is there no justice? Hinata had found her resolve and decided that the next time she sees Naruto she will speak to him and hope he accepts her as a friend, perhaps more one day. Kiba couldn't care less about Naruto housing the Kyuubi nor the fact that his father was the Yondaime. All that mattered was that he showed Naruto how much better than him he was. Kiba, like Sasuke, often made claims of superiority, but he didn't say it in arrogance, more as a confident challenge. By claiming he was better, he was challenging others to prove him wrong. Since Naruto also tended to claim that he would be the strongest, Kiba would take that as a challenge to prove him wrong. Kiba held no animosity towards Naruto, but he would love to see how he would fare against Naruto's new jutsu. Shino was of the Aburame clan, which was considered the creepiest clan in Konoha. They were considered to be weird and freaky due both to their use of bugs and their air of mystery. Though the truth is that there is no great dark secret hidden within the clan's compounds, the Aburames merely kept to themselves. They have gained great control over their emotions and tended to let logic dictate their actions. Therefore it was only logical that the jailer of the Kyuubi was indeed the jailer and not the demon incarnate. Shino, however, was having a hard time controlling his emotions ever since that day. When she first walked through that door, his heart beat in a way it never did before, and his blood rose to his cheeks. Uzumaki Naruko had captivated him in a way that he couldn't understand no matter how much logic he tried to interject. When she had gotten closer to ask to sit next to him, he turned his head to stop her from seeing the blush on his face. He found himself unable to say anything other than, whatever, which really isn't what he wanted to say. Not knowing what else to do, Shino decided that he would talk to his parents and have them help him understand what this strange feeling was. Meanwhile, somewhere in the land of water, snow gently drifted down on a bridge where a cold, starved child sat. He had dirty brown hair and dull brown eyes. It was obvious that he has been living on the streets for a while. A tall man in a shinobi outfit walks by, his name Momochi Zabuza. He had bandages wrapped around part of his face and wore his hite sideways. He stops just a few steps past the boy. There was something about the child he couldn't quite explain, then something else caught his attention. Two guys nearby were going on and on about something that had happened in Konohagakure. It's true, he's supposed to be the son of the Yondaime Hokage and an Uzumaki, said the first man. The second man responded with, no way, the Yondaime has been dead for 9 years and the Uzumakis for even longer. Yeah, but think about it, this is big stuff, of course they're going to keep secrets. And if you really think that all the Uzumakis would just disappear like that, then you're being stupid. And on top all that, the brought's a Jinchuriki, so you know he's got to be their ultimate weapon or something. As the men walked away continuing to talk about the news from Konoha, Zabuza couldn't help but ponder the tale. So Konoha has been keeping a few secrets, I see. Interesting though, an Uzumaki, haven't heard that name in a while. As he broke out of his musings, he looked towards where the boy that caught his attention earlier was, only to see that he was gone. He shrugged his shoulders and continued on to his previous destination. The boy, however, had grown tired of sitting on the bridge and begun walking in a direction that led to warmer weather. Naruto and Naruto were just returning from another very interesting day. Sakura apologized to them for her past actions. Hinata asked to be friends before she fainted from hearing his answer. Sasuke was still Sasuke, if maybe a little more reserved. Some of the other students either sneered at them or avoided them. Regardless of the negative attention, they were living on high. As they got home, they found Hitomi Nichan waiting for them. Hitomi had received a summons from the Hokage earlier, so she wasn't at the academy. Hitomi enters into the Hokage's office and says, "You wanted to see me, Hokage-sama." The Hokage looks up from his endless paperwork. "Yes, Hitomi-san. I understand your duty towards Naruto and Naruto, but unfortunately an urgent situation has arisen." Hitomi could see that the Hokage was intending to give her a mission despite her ongoing duty to protect the twins. Yet she was a ninja of Konoha and received her orders from the Hokage. And if the mission was serious enough that he would pull her away from her prior duties, then it must be worth it. The Hokage continued as he said, "A very important scroll was stolen from a visiting dignitary by 2 missing nin. I can't go into detail about the scroll, but if it is not returned soon, we could very well have an international crisis on our hands." Hitomi's eyes widened slightly. This was serious. The last thing anybody wanted to deal with was an international incident. "I would have given this task to someone else, but we are rather short-staffed at the moment and nobody with your level of tracking available. With your skill in tracking should be able to find them and do whatever it takes to get that scroll back." "Understood? Yes, Hokage-sama, I'll leave as soon as possible," said Hitomi. "Good, this is the last known location of the missing nin," he said, giving her a map with a circle showing the location. "Also don't worry about the twins, I'll be keeping an eye on the 2 until you return," he finished with a smile. Hitomi smiled as well as she said, "Even so, I feel not worrying about them would be difficult." And with she left, Hitomi beckoned the 2 children to her as she knelt before them. She didn't want to leave the children alone like this, especially after having just gotten to know each other, but there was a lot at stake in this mission. "The Hokage has given me a very important mission, so I will be gone for a little while." As she finished, she waited for their response. It was Naruto who said, "Do you really have to go?" her voice full of emotion. Hitomi sighed as she said, "I'm afraid so, I'm the only one who can complete this mission." "You will come back, right?" said Naruto. Hitomi smiled as she said, "Of course, I shouldn't be gone long, 2 days at the most." "We'll miss you," was the combined response of both Naruto and Naruto. "And I'll miss you both," said Hitomi as she pulled into a hug. "Now before I go, I wanted to talk to you too about your academic grade." Both twins groaned as Hitomi brought up this particular subject. Being a ninja is about more than just knowing how to punch and kick. Hitomi lectured. "I know," said Naruto, "but studying is just so boring." Naruto nodded her head in agreement. Hitomi thought on this for a second before she said, "How about this? Every week I will evaluate your progress, and if I think it's satisfactory, I'll take you to eat chiraku and let you have as much ramen as you can stomach." "Really?" shouted the twins. "Really?" assured Hitomi. Naruto grabbed Naruto and started dragging him with her as she said, "What are you waiting for? We gotta study." Naruto shouted back, "By Hitomi Nichan." Hitomi merely chuckled as she thought, those 2 would do anything for ramen. I best make sure that doesn't become an easily exploitable weakness, at least not for the wrong reasons." She finished that thought with a smile as she made to leave. When Hitomi arrived at the last known location of the missing nin, she was immediately able to pick up a trail. It seemed as if the missing nin barely made an effort to erase their tracks, which can mean one of two things. Either they are not as good as they think they are, or they are good but overconfident in their own abilities. Both of these were bad places to be for any ninja, let alone missing nin. Not knowing your own limits is a surefire way to get yourself killed when someone stronger comes along. Also, it's pretty much common sense that overconfidence will get you killed, it's only a matter of when. Hitomi ran off following the trail she was able to see. The tracks were cold, but she was sure if she hurried she would come across them soon. Hours have passed and she was getting pretty close to the border of the Land of Fire, but the trail was heating up, meaning she was close. Knowing she was close, she started moving with more stealth, not wanting the missing nin know that she was nearby. Another hour passed before she found her nin in a small clearing. There were two of them and they would have looked like any other ninja if not for the slash across the metal of their hite, signifying their status as missing nin. Hitomi hid in the trees and waited. She didn't know what they were capable of and it would be stupid to just jump down there and attack with no intel, so she waited and observed. Hiku did not know where he was. Truthfully, he didn't really care. All that mattered was that he was hungry, very hungry. With the thought of food foremost in his mind, his nose eagerly picked up the scent of food in the air. Hiku followed his nose, and whether or not it was by conscious effort, who can say? As the trees thinned somewhat, Hiku could easily make out two dangerous-looking men. It was obvious they were ninja. Hiku knew from experience to stay out of the way of ninjas. Normally he would just turn around and forget he ever saw them, but his hunger was making him do something he felt he would regret. Hiku stepped into the clearing, to the obvious surprise of both ninja. One of the ninjas stood up and walked towards the boy as he said in a nod to kindly voice, "What do we have here?" A sneer on his face. "Please sir, I just want some food if you can spare some." Hiku pleaded. "Hey Dorio, you catch that? The brat wants some food," said the man as if it was a joke. The other ninja called Dorio came over, joining the fun as he said, "Well, I don't know about food, but I'm sure you can find something for the brat to eat, Jeba." Hiku could see that they were going to seriously injure him, if not outright kill him. He hadn't felt this scared since his father tried to end his life. It was at this point that Hiku realized that he wasn't ready to die. The thought had occurred to him more than once, but now he realized that he truly wasn't ready to die yet. By pure instinct, something clicked in Hiku, just like when his father was trying to kill him. The moisture in the air hardened into ice that impaled the unsuspecting Jeba and exploded into dozens of sharp, jagged icicles. Dorio was shocked and didn't know what was going on as his partner died violently, but he suspected it had something to do with the kid. So before the kid do to him what he did to Jeba, he struck him in the back of the head. Hiku felt the impact and the sudden pain as darkness claimed his consciousness. Hitomi didn't know what to make of the situation. A moment ago the young boy had wandered into the clearing. It was obvious he had been living on the streets for some time. She wanted to get the boy out of there, but she wasn't going to jeopardize the mission just for him. As the situation was rapidly deteriorating, she was ready to take a chance and engage the missing nin. She was just preparing to throw a kunai when the man holding the boy was suddenly pierced by a spike of ice that seemed to explode, killing the man instantly. The boy was then knocked out by the other ninja. While he was otherwise occupied, she struck, killing the man before he even knew she was there. She ignored the boy for the moment as she still had a mission to take care of. She searched their bodies, then their belongings, until she found the scroll that had the symbol on it signifying it was what she was looking for. She went over to the boy to see that he was still alive but out cold and bleeding a little. She looked over at the man that had been speared with all the ice and thought about what it meant. She didn't see the boy performing any hand seals, and while it's possible to use a technique without hand seals, it would require more time to build up chakra, much faster to use hand seals. But the boy didn't use any hand seals, nor did he have time to build up his chakra, which can only mean one thing: Kekkei Genkai. On one hand, Hitomi could see how such an ability could benefit Konoha, and on another, she couldn't very well leave the child out here alone. So with these two thoughts in mind, Hitomi grabbed the boy and made her way back to Konoha. Hitomi had raced back to Konoha as fast as she could, and after leaving the boy in the care of the hospital, made her way to the Hokage to return the scroll and make her report. After having told the Hokage everything that had transpired, including about the boy, the Sandaime held a pondering look on his face. "You say you believed that the boy wielded some type of ice Kekkei Genkai?" said Sarutobi. "Yes, Hokage-sama," was her response. The Hokage took a puff of his pipe before he said, I have heard of a clan of Hyoten users. The Yuki clan, if I'm not mistaken, were one of the many Kekkei Genkei clans that suffered total destruction during the massacres of the Bloody Mist as they call it. It would certainly explain why the boy is living on the streets. What do you plan to do with the boy? Was Hitomi honestly curious question. The Hokage pondered this some more before giving his answer. Konoha would certainly benefit from having the Hyoten among its ranks, but I will leave that to the boy. After he awakes we will offer him a home here. Whether or not he accepts is up to him. Sarutobi mentally switch off that topic as his tone became slightly less serious. Also, Naruto is in the hospital. What? Was the stunned response from Hitomi. Don't worry, the Hokage assured her, it's just a broken arm. He and Naruto were training and Naruto was a bit reckless. He should be fine by tomorrow and Naruto is there keeping him company. Hitomi shook her head at that as it sounded like something Naruto would do. If I may, Hokage-sama, I believe I can get 2 birds with 1 stone. I shall check on Naruto and the boy. The Hokage merely nodded as he said, you're dismissed. As Haku awoke from his medically induced slumber, he was besieged by an agonizing headache. The pain from the headache eventually receded somewhat and he glanced at his surroundings. Though this held little value to him as his thoughts focused on what he had done. He had done it again, he had killed someone, and the thoughts that went through his head were that he was nothing more than a murderer. Haku looked at his hands in horror, haunted by the memory of the men he killed. It mattered not that they were going to kill him. Haku cried into his hands as he was unable to handle the realization that he was a killer. Naruto was fuming as he looked at the arm that was placed in a cast and remembered why he was here in the first place. Studying was boring but they persevered, egged on by Hitomi's promised. Afterwards they decided to do a little sparing Naruto against Naruto. Trademarked to their brawler style, they recklessly charged at each other. 2 things quickly became apparent: Naruto was stronger and better able to take a hit. Naruto realized she was not as she quickly backed away, grasping her arm where Naruto hit her. Naruto also realized that she was slightly faster and more flexible than Naruto, which she used to her advantage as she dodged his reckless blows and returned her own that he would just shrug off. This tangle went on for some time, with Naruto getting more and more frustrated that he wasn't able to land a hit. Finally Naruto decided to pull off a rather stupid move. As he cornered his sister, he jumped high into the air and was coming down fist first. Naruto managed to move out of the way before he had a chance to react. As Naruto's fist impacted the ground, there was an audible snap followed by the sound of Naruto yelling in pain. Naruto went over to see what was wrong and paused as she saw that Naruto's left arm was hanging at a very odd angle. Naruto gingerly held his arm, being careful not to move it, and looked at Naruto as if asking what to do. I think we need to get you to the hospital, was Naruto's response. Naruto was about to object but knew that she was right. He sighed and said, fine. Now he was here at the hospital and contemplating whether or not he should escape. Yet his mind turned to the spar he had with his sister and came to one conclusion. We suck, were the words that came out of Naruto's mouth. What? Said Naruto. She and Naruto hadn't talked since they came here. She knew that he was upset about being stuck here. She would be too if she was in his place. I've been thinking about our spar and I realized we suck. Naruto thought back to the spar and saw that he was right. Naruto has long been told that his skills in taijutsu needed improvement, but never having a reference for how bad he was, it fell on deaf ears. But seeing Naruto fight and realizing that her style was similar to his own brought home the fact that they needed to improve vastly. We need to get better, was Naruto's response, with Naruto nodding his head in agreement. Just then the door opened to reveal Hitomi Karen. She looked at Naruto and with a faint smile shook her head as she said, "Can't you stay out of trouble for just a little while?" Naruto quickly got up and rushed towards Hitomi shouting, "Hitomi Ni-chan," and happily hugged her legs tightly, which was making it difficult to stand. Naruto looked like he was torn between doing what his sister was doing and hiding away in embarrassment. Hey Hitomi Ni-chan," he said a bit more subdued. Hitomi walked up to Naruto, placed her hand on his head giving it a little rub and said, "I'm glad you're alright Naruto, but you should never perform such outrageous and reckless moves like that unless it is necessary." Naruto bowed his head a little while Hitomi continued in a gentle voice, "I worry about both of you and don't want to have to see you in here more than absolutely necessary." "Sorry Hitomi Ni-chan, I'll be more careful from now on." he said with complete seriousness in his voice. The last thing he wanted to do was worry the people he cared about. Naruko was also nodding her head in agreement. Good, said Hitomi in a more upbeat tone. Now the doctor has said that you are to stay in bed until tomorrow, and I don't want you sneaking off either, you understand? Naruto groaned in frustration at that but nodded his understanding. Now me and Naruko are going to leave you alone to rest, but we'll be back tomorrow. With that, Hitomi and Naruko said goodbye to Naruto and left him alone. They walked through the halls of the hospital with Naruko quickly realizing that they were going the wrong way to exit. Hitomi Ni-chan, I thought we were about to leave. The question plain on her face. We are, but we have one more stop to make before we do. They quickly made it to their destination with Hitomi opening the door. They were greeted to the sight of a child slightly older than Naruko crying. Hitomi didn't know how to handle the situation as she certainly wasn't expecting to find the boy crying. However, Naruko, being a lot more impulsive, was already rushing to the boy's side. She didn't like seeing people in such distress and felt a need to help the boy whatever his problems. Hey now, what's wrong? She said, trying to get the boy's attention. Haku took a moment away from his misery to look at the cute red-headed girl standing next to him. Who are you? He said in a rather soft-spoken voice. Naruko cheerfully shouted, I'm Uzumaki Naruko. Making sure to actually use her name this time. So what's with all the gloom and doom? Said Naruko, tact never having been either of the twins' strong point. Hitomi meanwhile was standing back watching the kids in amusement. Haku was distracted from his misery due to Naruko's introductions but was reminded why he was crying after her last statement. I am a monster, a murderer. He looked at his hands, seeing the blood on them that no one else could see. I'm not wanted. I have no purpose in this world, yet I don't want to die. Tears streamed from his eyes as he talked. I have killed them using this hated blood. I am nothing more than a monster. You're not a monster. Haku was so shocked by the response that his tears almost immediately dried up as he said, What? I was Naruko who was saying, I'm pretty sure I can tell what a monster looks like, and you certainly don't look like one. Haku tried to deny her words as he almost shouted, but I killed them. It was Hitomi who made the next move. She had been listening to the boy and her heart was wrenching at the pain she knew this boy must have suffered. She sidled up to the boy and wrapped him in a comforting hug. This surprised Haku on several levels, since not only had he not seen her but the last time he was hugged was by his mother. Hitomi spoke in a soft and gentle voice as she said, You are an amazing boy. Haku was surprised at the level of sincerity in her voice. The fact that you can feel such pain for a man who was perfectly willing to kill you proves that you are not a monster but human, more human than most could ever hope to be. You are not a monster, you are not a murderer, and you are not alone. Every word the woman said to Haku shook him to the core, and the last few shook him the most. You are not alone. These words rang out to every fiber of his being, and he allowed himself to hope. He looked to the strange green-haired woman whom comforting words were spoken with sincerity and the red-headed girl whom bright smile warmed his soul. Though the blood on his hands and the tragedies of his life weighted on his soul, they no longer seemed to be the burden they were before. He allowed himself to hope that these people would become his precious people and that they would give his life purpose. Hitomi once again found herself in the Hokage's office as she explained to him the latest developments concerning Haku. His name is Haku, Hitomi reported to the Hokage. From what I was able to get out of him, he has been living on the streets as an orphan for several years now. Hitomi scowled as she recited this part. His mother was killed by his father after finding out she was of the Yuki clan. He then tried to kill Haku, whose abilities defended him, and killed his father much the same way he killed the missing nin. He feels guilty about the death of these two men to the point of depression. For the most part he seems to be a very gentle and kind-hearted child who was dealt a bad hand. Much like Naruto, said Sarutobi as he took in all he heard. It saddened him to no end that such children should have to suffer like this. Life can indeed be cruel. It sounds like you and Naruko bonded with the child, and as fragile as he is, I don't want to risk straining the child any further. So would you be willing to take another child into your household? Asked the Hokage. Hitomi seemed to think about as she said, I admit that I have taken a shine to the boy and it would be for the best in the long run. So yes, I'm willing to take Haku into my household. Very well, I'll have everything set up to make him an official citizen of Konoha. Haku looked out of the hospital window and got a good look of the village Konoha. For the most part he was surprised as everyone went along with their lives alongside the ninjas. Where he was from, ninjas were generally avoided and feared with good reason. But the ninja here were almost the opposite and seemed friendly in comparison. Of course, thinking back, he probably shouldn't be that surprised considering Hitomi was a ninja as well. That trail of thought led him to think about how Hitomi had him tell her things about his past that he thought he would never tell anyone. The fact that he trusted her was again something he had not experienced in years. At the sound of the door opening, he turned to face it and saw Naruko coming in dragging a boy her age with her. "Hey Haku," said Naruko excitedly, "I wanted you to meet someone." She gestured to the boy who looked similar to her with the same whisker marks and blue eyes but had bright blonde hair. "This is my twin brother Naruto." Naruto was finally freed from his hospital prison, with his arm mostly healed though he still wore a sling. Naruto looked at Haku, having already gotten the whole story from Naruko via mind speak. "Nice to meet ya Haku," Naruto said just as cheerfully as Naruko. Haku was stunned by Naruto's attitude. He couldn't believe the twins' seemingly cheerful and carefree attitude. They talked to each other with the twins doing most of the talking. Eventually Naruto was bragging about how he could use such a powerful jutsu as Kage Bunshin. This led to talk about how Naruko and Naruto used to be one, about how Naruto was shunned by the village, and more importantly about how they used to be alone. Haku realized they were kindred spirits. They knew what it was like to suffer at the hands of others and what it was like to be alone. Something clicked in Haku's mind. These were his precious people, the twins and Hitomi. There was no longer any doubt in his mind. He wanted to be with them, to help them achieve their dreams, to protect them. He realized that though he hated the idea, he would even kill for them if it was ever truly necessary. He smiled at the twins, giving them the first genuine smile to grace his face in years. Age 8. Naruto laid back staring at the sky, cloud watching with his friends Shikamaru, Choji, and Haku. As he stared at the clouds, he didn't really get why Shikamaru liked this so much, but as long as he was with friends he didn't mind. It amazed him to realize that merely a few months ago he was the village pariah, but now he was almost a celebrity. He was still shunned and ignored by some people, but they were in the minority and subtle about their distaste for him. Naruto turned to Haku as he said, "I still don't see why you turned down that chance at getting into a higher grade." Haku smiled as if this was a common occurrence, probably because it was. Weeks earlier Haku was given an aptitude test to see where he would best fit in the ninja academy. Surprisingly, he tested high and was offered the chance of being placed in an advanced class. Yet he turned it down, saying he was content with being in the same class as Naruto and Naruko. Naruto continued as he said, "You could become a super powerful ninja in no time." In his usual soft-spoken tone Haku answered, "I have no ambitions to become a super powerful ninja as you put it. I am happy where I am. Not everybody has such lofty dreams as you do Naruto," said Shikamaru as he included himself into the conversation. "My goal in life is to graduate an average genin, be placed on an average team, perform average missions, eventually marry an average woman and have 2.5 kids, one boy and one girl. After my son becomes a ninja, then I'll retire and spend the rest of my life playing shogi and watching clouds, then die." Shikamaru opened his eyes to see that not only was Naruto giving him a strange look, but so was Haku and Choji. "That's a little exact," stated Choji. "Where does the little come in?" muttered Haku. "If you're trying to be average, you are not doing a good job considering your grades say below average," said Naruto. Shikamaru merely shrugged his shoulders before closing his eyes again. Continuing the previous conversation, Haku said, "I only wish to become strong enough to help and protect those close to me. I feel one can only become truly strong by having something to protect." Naruto nodded his head in understanding. While the true meaning of Haku's statement went over his head, he understood where he was getting at. Originally, Naruto's goal for becoming Hokage was a bit selfish but understandable, for what he truly wanted was attention and recognition. After the truth of who his father was and what he had done came to light, Naruto realized that he sealed the Kyuubi into him not just to save the village but also to save him. It was a startling realization that had his father not sealed the Kyuubi into him, he would probably be dead as well. It was this, along with the fact that he truly had things worth protecting, that helped him understand the true purpose of being Hokage, and made him even more determined to become one. Naruto stared at the clouds, thinking about what the future may bring. silently vowing to make his father proud and become the greatest Hokage Konoha has ever known. Meanwhile, Naruto was currently having some girl time with Hinata and Sakura. After Sakura had come to her senses and realized the kind of person Sasuke was, and the person she herself was becoming because of him, she made amends with Naruto and Naruto. And through the twins she became good friends with Hinata as well. Though she was slightly more boy than Tom, Sakura and Hinata consider Naruto one of the girls and had taken it upon themselves to make her more feminine, while Sakura has Hinata as just along for the ride. Hinata's exposure with the twins has been very good for her, giving her more confidence than she ever had in her life, which admittedly wasn't a lot but was still progress. She was able to talk to them without passing out or looking sick, but like a mouse she tended to be skittish and would often revert back to her former shy self. Sakura was currently brushing Naruto's hair and explaining some of the styles that she could do with it. Naruto wasn't all that interested, she much more preferred to be training, but she listened anyway. Besides, it was kind of soothing to have her brushing her hair. "Your hair is so soft and long," cooed Sakura, "and we just don't get this shade of red in Konoha. We don't get that shade of pink here either," said a smirking Naruto. Sakura giggled as she said, "True. My mom said that her mother came from a village where pink hair is fairly common." "You mean there is a whole village of you pinkettes out there? Who are you calling a pinkette, you tomato head?" said Sakura with a pout, her cheeks puffing out slightly. The two girls glared at each other for a moment before they both burst out laughing. It amazed them both how they had become such good friends in just a couple of months. Sakura had a bit of a smirk as she said, "We're not the only ones with odd hair color. What about Hinata? She has that dark blue hair while everyone else in her clan has that dull brown hair." Hinata, who was nearby listening to them talk, gave a hesitant before deciding to play along. Hinata straightened up and gave an almost regal air as she said, "My hair is not blue. It's actually a very shiny black th that gives off a dark blue hue." She then gave them a look that seemed to say, "Would you dare argue with the queen?" Both Naruto and Sakura looked at Hinata in amazement, then looked at each other before giggling into full-blown laughter. Hinata's features softened as she joined them. Eventually they calmed down and Sakura said, "I think we're done with hair for the moment." "Thank Kami," was Naruto's near-silently response. Continuing, Sakura says, "Instead let's talk about boys." Naruto nearly choked as she said, "Boys." Hinata's face was red and she looked pretty close to passing out. Innocently Sakura says, "Yep, boys. So Naruto, tell me about that Haku boy you seem to know." Age 9. It had been little over a year since the event that has changed Naruto's life in ways he could never imagine. The village was settling down to some normalcy and the twins were becoming old news. Naruto was walking among the training grounds as he tended to do now and then. He soon came across a familiar training ground he encountered a year ago, and it happened to be occupied by the same person. Tenten was once again training, and harder than the last time he saw her, as she was targeting the individual leaves of a tree. The fact that there was a pile of leaves cut in half under the tree was a true testament of this girl's skills. Tenten finally noticed that she had company and turned to see Naruto. Naruto remembered the threat she had made the last time they met and how she seemed ready to follow through. "Hey, Tenten, right?" said Naruto with a nervous chuckle. "I'm sorry for barging in on you like this, I'll just be going." He quickly made to turn and leave when Tenten shouted, "Naruto, wait." He stopped and turned to look at her. The only thing that stopped him was that there was no anger in her voice. She looked embarrassed as she said, "Look, I just wanted to apologize for threatening you like that the last time we meet. It wasn't your fault, I was just dealing with some stuff and I guess it kind of overwhelmed me." Naruto gave her his bright foxy grin as he said, "No problem. Besides, I kinda figure that you weren't really angry at me. I mean, I had people angry at me before. With you it was more like you were taking your anger out on me." "Yeah, like I said, I'm sorry about that," said Tenten, looking more sheepish. "Hey, don't worry about it, I'm not one to hold a grudge." If you don't mind telling me, what was the problem?" asked a curious Naruto. Tenten's face gained a slight blush as she said, "I really rather not say, but, well, sigh. Do you know what a period is?" From the emphasis placed on the word period, Naruto could only assume that she wasn't talking about the dot at the end of a sentence. The only other period he knew of was one he rather not think about, and the only reason he knew what a period was because of Naruto. Hitomi had decided that it was time that Naruto became more aware of what her body would be going through in the years to come. Naruto was not pleased, but she was more than pleased to share her discomfort with her brother. Thus Naruto knew more about periods and feminine hygiene than most men would ever know. Naruto nodded his head to her question, and the look of horror on his face confirmed they were on the same page. Unlike most girls who don't get their period until they're around 12, I got mine early, on the day we first met. As she finished, her face was looking almost red enough to rival Hinata. They both stood there in awkward silence, looking everywhere but at each other. Naruto was silent as he really had no idea what to say. He did not expect the conversation to take a turn to something that most men went through great strides to avoid. Tenten could not believe that she had told someone the most embarrassing thing to ever happen to her, a boy no less. Finally Naruto broke the tension with an "acquired." Tenten couldn't help herself as she burst out laughing at the absurdity of the situation. "Look, why don't we forget any of this ever happened and start over?" Then he held out his hand and said, "My name's Uzumaki Naruto." Tenten had a slight smile on her face as she took his hand and said, "Tenten." Naruto had just dodged a punch coming at her from her shaggy hair and bushy-browed companion. Naruto and Lee were currently training, something that they have taken to doing lately. While Lee was nowhere close to being an expert in taijutsu, he certainly knew a lot more than she did. Also, this gave Lee a chance to spar with someone outside of class, as he was generally looked down upon for being dead last. Naruto tried a return punch only to have her legs kicked out from under her and to suddenly find herself staring at the sky. Lee towered over her in her field of vision as he held out his hand. "Good match," said Lee with a smile. Naruto grabbed his hand, grumbling, "But I still can't beat you." "True, but you're getting better," said Lee as he pulled her up. They both went to a nearby tree to sit and rest. After all, they'd been sparring for an hour or so. Naruto's fighting skills were still reminiscent of a brawler, but she was slowly gaining more style thanks to Lee. "Hey Lee, I know you're not so good with ninjutsu and ninja tools, but what about your academics?" Lee bowed his head in shame, not saying anything since it wasn't necessary. "Yeah, I thought so, mine's used to be that bad as well." Lee nodded his head before saying, "What do you mean used to be?" "Well, Hitomi Nichan got on me and Naruto about our grades. She said that being a ninja is about more than just knowing how to punch and kick. But studying is just so boring, so Hitomi Nichan said that every week she will check our progress, and if she like what she sees, she'll reward us with as much ramen as we can eat. We're no longer the dead last of the class anymore, we're in the middle." Lee stared at her as he said, "So your One-nichan got you to study by using ramen?" "Yep," was Naruto's innocent reply, not realizing the point he was trying to make. "Anyway, I was thinking that you can come study with us. You may not be able to do the other stuff, but if you can work on your academics, you surely won't be the dead last anymore." Lee smiled as he said, "Thanks Naruto, I'd be honored to." Age 10. The day was October 10th, a day that used to be reserved only for celebrating the Yondaime's victory over the Kyuubi, but it now served as more. Today was Naruto's and Naruko's birthday, a day that used to serve as a harsh reminder to what they didn't have in life. Yet it now meant what it was always meant to be, a celebration to their very existence. All the friends the twins had made in the past years were present with presents, ready to give the twins their regards and well wishes. The party had lasted most of the day, with the twins playing, hanging, and generally having fun with their friends. After all the good food and time playing games were had, it was time to pass out the gifts, which featured the time-honored tradition of outdoing the other person's gift. Haku stepped up first. He was one of their closest friends, practically a big brother for the both of them. He was a far cry from the world-weary orphan he was several years back. He handed each of the twins a carefully wrapped package. They quickly tore them apart. Naruto pulled out a pair of bright orange goggles and Naruko an equally bright orange hair ribbon. "Cool, how did you know I wanted this?" shouted Naruto in excitement. "Yeah, I've been wanting this for a while," echoed Naruko. Haku merely smiled as he said, "I have my ways." Truth was, the twins had been eyeing these particular items whenever they went shopping but didn't have the money to get it. Haku just picked up on it. A few of the others were giving glares to Haku for having given the twins something they actually wanted. The next person to present a gift was Tenten. While she was more familiar with Naruto, she did know Lee since he was in her class. Also, she met Naruko a few times and they both hit it off pretty well, considering they were both tomboys. She handed Naruto a rectangular box that was a meter long and 6 inches in width. Naruto was given a box that was surprisingly heavy and jangled somewhat. Naruto opened his box to see what looked like a 3-foot metal staff. What's this?" said a truly confused Naruto. "You got to channel chakra into it," said Tenten with a smirk on face her as she stepped back some. Not knowing what to expect, Naruto cautiously held the staff at arm's length and channeled chakra into it. The staff immediately grew 6 feet in length. Naruto's eyes weren't the only ones to go bugging. "Whoa, that is so awesome, thanks Tenten." "You're welcome, it cost me a pretty penny but I hope it serves you well." She finished with a smug look on her face as she could almost feel the glares digging into her skin. Naruto quickly opened her box to see what she got and pulled out what seemed to be a large weighted kunai welded to a long thin chain, with a weight on the other end. "When I was trying to decide on something for you, the kunai and chain seemed to fit." "I think I know what you mean," she said as she stared at the chain with a strange reverence. "It feels right somehow." "Thanks." It was Rock Lee who next came forward. He offered them no wrapped gift, instead giving them each a scroll. Thanks to the twins, he had vastly improved in his academics and was even receiving help in taijutsu from Hitomi. "I have found 2 styles of taijutsu that I think would complement your style nicely." "Thanks Lee, this is great," said Naruto. "For sure, I can't wait to try out some of these moves," shouted Naruto as he looked through the scroll. Sakura was the next to step forward as she handed them what looked to be a book wrapped up, and as they tore off the wrapping, that's exactly what it was. Sakura had long since given up on Sasuke and has lately been setting her eyes on Haku. She knew that he was a very kind boy, and despite his feminine look, he looked cute. "I had done some research on the Uzumakis and thought you might like this. The Uzumakis were apparently the best in Fuinjutsu, so I got you this book, The Basics of the Sealing Arts." "Wow, thanks Sakura," said Naruto with a hint of deeper emotions on his voice. "Yeah, thanks. To think that at one time the Uzumakis were the greatest in Fuinjutsu," finished Naruto. Hinata hesitantly stepped forward. The girl she was before befriending the twins would almost be a shadow compared to the more outgoing and confident girl she had become. She was no Sakura, and sometimes old habits were hard to break, but she was generally a cheerful and friendly girl. Hinata gave both of them a letter. "What's this, Hinata?" was Naruto's question. "It's a favor," was her simple response. The confusion on both of their faces only grew more so as Naruto said, "A favor." Hinata lowered her head a little as she started pressing her fingers together. "One of her old habits that she only does when nervous. I couldn't really decide on what to get you, so I talked to my father and he suggested this." The twins had only met Hinata's father Hyuga Hiyashi once. He was a very imposing figure, which only made it more surprising when he thanked them. He apparently was happy about the positive change they had on Hinata's behavior. "Anytime in the future each of you are allowed to ask one favor of the Hyugas, any favor within reason of course. This is a gift from me and my father." Hinata bowed slightly as she finished. The twins were speechless as the full magnitude became clear. They had a favor from the Hyugas, and that was nothing to laugh about. "Thanks Hinata," said Naruto. "And tell your dad we said thanks," said Naruto. Hinata had a slight smile at the shocked looks on the other's face. She could hear Haku muttering, "And all I got them was goggles and a ribbon." Choji stepped forward. Out of all their friends, Choji was the only one to have been changed very little through his interactions with the twins. He was still the same kind-hearted, food-loving, don't call me fat, boy they first met years ago. He gave them a nice-sized pouch and said, "Inside this is the Akamichi's special food pills. Just one could probably keep you going for days, they taste great, and last practically forever. Also I suggest you don't eat too many at once, trust me you'll regret it." As he said this he was rubbing his tummy in a way that said he learned from experience. "Thanks Choji," was the combined reply from both twins. There was only one person left, Nara Shikamaru. Shikamaru was a little more outgoing and willing to play. That is to say, he learned it's better to keep the twins happy so they don't bother him on his downtime. In other words, he hadn't really changed. "It was too troublesome trying to think of a gift for you too, so I decided to get you this." He gave them a large brown cardboard box. The twins expected this from Shikamaru. Heck, everyone expected this from Shikamaru. The twins opened the box to find a lot of cup ramen, and not any ramen but a flavor they never had before, shrimp mushroom fusion. They were suddenly of one mind as they shouted, "Ramen! Thank you, Shikamaru." Naruto even went so far as to hug him, all the while Shikamaru wore a knowing smirk. The others were simultaneously trying to kill Shikamaru with a look for that low blow and wondering why they didn't think of it themselves. Age 10, several months after birthday. Naruto was currently at one of his favorite training grounds, Training Ground 7. It was a large clearing that held 3 wooden posts. Nearby was a large stream with the rest of the grounds surrounded by forest. Nearby was also the memorial stone that held the names of the shinobi who gave their lives defending Konoha. Among them were the names of Naruto's mother and father. Oftentimes after training he would go to the stone to pay his respects. Now was no different as he finished beating on a tree, his knuckles bruised and sweat glistening of his brow. After going through the cool-down exercise Hitomi taught him, he went toward the stone only to see that somebody else was already there. He appeared to be a young man somewhere in his 20s. He had silvery spiked hair that seemed to defy gravity. He wore a mask which covered much of his face from his nose down to his neck. His hite-8 was worn lopsided so that it covered one of his eyes and more of his face. As Naruto studied the man, he could see that his focus was on the memorial stone, leading him to conclude that the man was paying his respects to the dead. The sad and pained look in his one visible eye only seemed to confirm this theory. What do ya know? All those deduction lessons from Shikamaru are paying off, was Naruto's current line of thought. The man stood there for a second before realizing that he was not alone. He turned to see a blonde-haired boy staring at him. He was a little surprised as well, testament by his eye widening slightly upon instantly recognizing the boy whom father he had just been thinking of, though the goggles reminded him of his late friend. It was Naruto who said with a foxy smile, "My name is Uzumaki. Naruto, who are you?" The man could only shake his head in amusement at Naruto's behavior as he said, "Hitaki Kakashi. So tell me, Naruto, what are you doing here?" Naruto's smile softened a little as he said, "I'm here to pay respect to my mom and dad. I assume that you're here for a similar reason." "I guess you could say that, just paying my respect to my sensei." "Who is your sensei?" asked Naruto innocently as he looked over the many names on the stone. Kakashi pointed to one name that the blonde instantly recognized, "But that's my dad." Kakashi simply nodded his head, waiting for the boy to get it. "You were trained by my dad?" Naruto had the vague impression that Kakashi was smirking as he said, "I was a part of your father's genin team. His passing was unfortunate." The look in his eyes seemed to say that statement was gravely understated. "He was the greatest man I ever known and was like a father to me. Not a day goes by without me wishing that it could have been me instead of." He trailed off, not needing to say more. "Well, that's a load of crap." Kakashi was once again stunned and was starting to think that with Naruto that might be a common occurrence. Dad was the Yondaime Hokage, and as Hokage his duty was to protect Konoha by any means necessary, even if it meant his life. "He probably wouldn't like you standing here all the time being sad. I know I wouldn't. He died to protect you just as he died to protect me. You shouldn't lessen his memory by saying that you rather it was you who died." Kakashi just stared at the boy for a second before he burst out laughing. He couldn't help himself as the absurdity of the situation hit him. All these years he had been moping around, bemoaning his fate for all he lost, and it took a 10-year-old boy to finally get him to see truth. Naruto, however, was angrily yelling at Kakashi, wondering what was so dang funny. Kakashi stared at the stone as he thought, "The boy is right. Sensei would be upset with me if he knew about all the time I wasted in front of this stone. Obito too." Kakashi turned his gaze from the stone to Naruto. "Perhaps I should let the past remain in the past and focus on the future and ensure that history isn't repeated." He briefly turned back to the stone as he thought, "Sensei, Obito, I'll be back, but not for a while." "Say, Naruto," said Kakashi as he interrupted the boy's angry rant, "how much do you know about ninjutsu?" asked Kakashi as he gave his trademark eye smile. Naruto was currently at the Hyuga's personal training grounds assisting Hinata in her training. Accompanying them was Tenten. The training grounds was little more than a large grass clearing with a few structures nearby. Hinata had changed drastically from the terminally shy girl she used to be. She was a soft-spoken girl, having lost the stutter that once defined her speech, and though she would never be as outgoing as, say, Naruto, she was social enough. While Hinata's social skills have grown by leaps and bounds, her taijutsu skills and confidence in that area needed much more work. Tenten, however, had come into a flaw in her fighting style. Naruto had painfully made her realize that as a long-range weapon specialist she was rather vulnerable in a close-up fight. This prompted her to start thinking more about close combat weapons and how to incorporate them into her style. Sweat rolled down Hinata's face as she pressed the attack against her best friend. Naruto skillfully dodged Hinata's attack, returned with a punch of her own only for Hinata to catch it. She quickly withdrew her fist, but the damage was done as she felt her hand become slightly numb. She quickly backed up, putting some space between her and her attacker. They stared at each other for a heartbeat before charging. Hinata saw that Naruto was about to punch her. She was preparing to catch the blow and end the fight with a knockout hit. However, the punch turned out to be a feint as Naruto dropped down and swept Hinata's legs out from under her. Hinata stared at the sky and the kunai that was in her face for a moment, then looked at the smiling face of her friend. Hinata's physical state was in stark contrast to Naruto. Hinata was breathing hard and felt like she was sweating buckets. Naruto, however, seemed to be breathing slightly harder and only had a thin sheen of perspiration. Naruto removed the kunai from Hinata's face and held out her hand as she said, "You alright, Hina-chan?" Hinata grabbed the offered hand and was lifted up. "I'm okay." "Ko-chan," said Hinata as she struggled to get air into her lungs. "Hey Tenten, what do you think?" Naruto questioned Tenten, who was on the sideline gauging the two opponents' skills. "Well, for one I'd say that you were holding back. I seen you do better than that." Naruto chuckled embarrassingly at that. "As for you Hinata, it's obvious that you know the Juken style, but you seem to be fighting yourself. Your movements are stiff as if you were forcing yourself." Hinata bowed her head. It was true, she never felt comfortable using the Juken style. It irked her that she could never flow into the Juken like her father, Neji, or even her little sister Hanabi. She knew the style, it was just that her body could never get comfortable using it, causing her to force herself every step of the way. She feared that this made her less of a Hyuga. She raised her head and confessed this to Naruto and Tenten. "I see," said Hyuga Hiyashi, causing the girls to jump as they had not sensed his presence until he spoke. "Hinata, you should have come to me about this sooner and I would have helped you with this." Hinata bowed her head in shame as she said, "I am sorry to disappointed you, father." Hiyashi stood before his daughter and sighed, then he gently lifted her head up as he said, "Hinata, you need not be ashamed. I should have noticed sooner, you take so much after your mother." "Hinata, I am your father and you are a Hyuga, never think less of yourself. Now come, I'll be revising your training." Hinata was stunned. While her father was never cold-hearted towards her and her sister, his duties as clan head rarely allowed him to show them signs of affection and tenderness. Even rarer was him allowing others to see that tenderness. Meanwhile, Naruto and Tenten just stood there not knowing what to make of the family moment they just witnessed. It was Tenten who said, "Perhaps we should go to another training ground and leave them be for now." Naruto got the hint as she nodded her head and shouted to Hinata, "Hey Hina-chan, we'll spar another time, bye." Hinata was still out of it somewhat but was aware enough to wave bye. Suddenly she snapped out of it and hurried off to follow her dad. Age 11. To say that Sasuke was furious was like saying that the sun was only a little hot. His fury was such that it took on a cold and calculating intensity. The source of his ire was not the Uzumakis, though they were indirectly involved. No, the one who held his ire was Haku. Naruto and Naruto's academics, while much better than they were several years ago, was still only fair and middling. They fortunately excelled in other areas. Haku, however, has proved himself to be an exceptional ninja in training, so much so that he was currently in possession of the top spot. It's for this reason that Sasuke is pissed beyond all reason. He was supposed to be the top dog. He was supposed to be superior. He was an Uchiha, a member of what should have been the greatest clan in Konoha. He had to prove he was better, even if it meant fighting him in an all-out battle. "Fight me," Sasuke demanded of Haku. School had ended for the day and Sasuke had immediately zeroed in on Haku. From the tone of his voice and the look in his eyes, Haku could tell that he wasn't asking for a simple friendly sparring session. He wanted a no-holds-bar, all-out fight which held the possibility of someone getting seriously hurt. While Haku was quite willing to spar with someone so that they may both improve in skills, he was not willing to encourage an unnecessary fight between them, so his answer was, "No." "What? Are you afraid or something? Fight me," Sasuke demanded again, trying to goad Haku into fighting him. Naruto, having witnessed the whole thing, jumped in and said, "Why don't you fight me instead?" Sasuke hesitated as his goal was to fight the so-called number one and prove who really deserved the title. He had no real quarrel with Naruto at the moment. "You're not afraid I'm going to whoop your sorry butt, are you?" taunted Naruto. Sasuke's eyes flared. Now he had a real reason to fight Naruto. "Follow me," was all he said as he bounded off. "Are you sure you know what you are doing, Naruto?" asked Haku. "Don't worry, Nichin. I got this in the bag." Besides, Sasuke been needing someone to knock him down a peg for a while, stated Naruto as he ran after Sasuke. Haku could only sigh as he followed, simply to ensure they don't kill each other. They quickly made it to one of the many training grounds of Konoha. Sasuke and Naruto stared at each other, fighting a battle of will before the main event. Haku, reluctantly acting as the unofficial referee, raised his hand to signal that they get ready and quickly dropped it as he jumped out of the way. Yet neither move. Naruto had the concept of recklessly jumping into battle beaten out him, so he stood staring at his opponent, waiting for him to make the first move. Sasuke, who was getting tired of waiting and wanted to finish this, quickly saw that Naruto was waiting on him and decided to oblige him. Sasuke fired off several kunai as an opening salvo and ran forward. Naruto rolled forward, dodging the salvo and returning one of his own. Sasuke dodged to his right and engaged Naruto in hand-to-hand. They traded kicks and punches, managing to land a few but dodging or blocking most. Sasuke sees an opening and prepares to give Naruto a roundhouse kick, only for the blonde to barely dodge by crouching low. Naruto then jumps high and gives Sasuke a devastating double kick in the chest. Sasuke staggers back but remains standing. He jumps back, putting more space between him and Naruto. Running his hands through a specific set of signs, he calls out the name of a technique: Kaden Gokakyu no Jutsu. Placing his hand to his mouth in a specific way, he inhale then exhale, creating a large ball of fire heading towards Naruto. Naruto quickly goes through his own set of hand signs as he shout, "Futon Daitopa." Naruto unleashes a great gust of wind that overtakes the fireball, causing it to become a raging inferno heading in the opposite direction. Sasuke narrowly escapes the flames, only to get knocked in the head hard enough to cause him to fall to his knees. He look up only to see Naruto standing before him, his bow staff in his hand with one end inches from his face. The hint was clear: he lost to Uzumaki Naruto. Sasuke had set out to prove that he deserved to be the number 1 rank, when all he proved was that the former dead last, who didn't even rank as number 2, was better than him. He didn't understand. How could he lose? He was an Uchiha. This stuff was supposed to come easy for him. His brother was a full-fledged shinobi at the age of 4, yet he couldn't even claim to be number 1. "You got a lot of talent, Sasuke, but talent will only take you so far. I'm stronger than you because I worked hard to get to this point, whereas you only tried as hard as you needed to, coasting on your talents. If you don't put in the effort to work for it, you'll just be known as the guy who had potential but lost it." Naruto held out his hand and smiled as he said, "But it doesn't have to be that way." Sasuke stared at Naruto's hand as he thought on what was said. It was true that he coasted on his natural talents to be more than enough to defeat anyone who came his way. Now that he actually thought about it, he realized what an idiot he'd been. Sure, his blood was superior, but that didn't mean a lot effort wasn't put into it. He swatted Naruto's hand out of his face as he stood. "I don't need your charity, Uzumaki. The next time we fight, the outcome will be much different," stated Sasuke as he glared at Naruto, then turned and walked away. Naruto and Haku simply stared at Sasuke as he walked away. Naruto then turned to Haku and said, "Well, that was fun." With his foxy grin, Haku shook his head, unable to believe that Naruto could be so nonchalant after accentually making a mortal enemy out of Sasuke. "Hey Haku, I'm hungry, want to go to Ichiraku and get some ramen?" said as he rubbed his tummy. Haku once again sighed as he gave a small smile and said, "Sure, Naruto." Shikamaru and Choji had arrived at the twins' house. This was normal considering that this is where the twins and their various friends usually congregate. It was as if the twins were the glue that held together the unique friendship that has formed between them all. They headed to the backyard, which held a large training area full of wooden posts, targets, and wooden dummies. They saw that Tenten was already there, as was Naruto, but as soon as they saw Naruto they froze. "Hey guys," said Tenten as they stepped into the backyard but stayed just outside of the training area, as did Tenten. "I wouldn't go in there if I was you." Naruto was accentually terrorizing the training area, destroying anything she could reach with her kunai and chain. That would seem to include Lee, who was laying on the ground knocked out. Is there a reason why Naruto has gone insane? Asked Choji. What did you say, fat boy? Shouted enraged Naruto. What did you call me? Shouted an equally enraged Choji, who charged at Naruto only to get knocked out as the weighted end of the chain collided with his head. Shikamaru turned to Tenten wanting an explanation. She's having female problems. Shikamaru's genius mind instantly interpreted that for what it really meant, and the prognosis was not good. Naruto was having her first period. The first one is usually the worst, after that you get used to it, said Tenten as the voice of experience. Suddenly Naruto stopped swinging the chain and collapsed to her knees, tears flowing from her eyes. Tenten ran over to the girl knowing what she was going through. On top of the cramps, your emotions are on a razor edge, changing at the drop of a hat. Is she okay? Asked Shikamaru. Tenten looked at him as if he asked a stupid, which he probably did. Let's take her in the house, said Tenten. They cleaned her up, mostly Tenten, and laid her to bed. You go ahead and have you a little nap and you should be feeling as good as new. Now before I go, you sure you don't need anything else? I'm sure, thanks for everything, Tenten, said Naruto in a more subdued tone. Don't sweat it, kid, I know what it's like. See ya, Shikamaru? Naruto prepared to ask if the boy sat at the foot of her bed. Yeah, answered Shikamaru in his usual bored tone. Do you think Choji and Lee will forgive me? Shikamaru raised an eyebrow as this was out of character for Naruto, but he already knew why. Of course they will. Choji's too nice to let something like this ruin your friendship with him. And Lee would more than likely assume that this was his fault somehow and be trying to make amends. Naruto chuckled lightly. She knew he was right. She knew she was being silly, but it felt nice for someone to tell her anyway. Shikamaru, could you stay here for just a little while? Shikamaru was silently for a few seconds before he sighed and said with a surprising amount of tenderness in his voice, sure. Age 11, graduation time for upperclassmen. Tenten and Rock Lee stood before their assembled friends showing off their new Hite 8. They were now genin, rookie ninjas of Konoha. So cool. Cooed Naruto. I can't wait to get my own. I can't believe you two are on the same team, what are the odds? Said Sakura. About the same as winding up on the same team as Neji. Stated a despondent Tenten, who then turned to Hinata and said, did I ever tell you your cousin is a jerk? Only last week, and the week before that, and so forth. Stated Hinata with humor in her voice. Then I'll say it again, he's a jerk. Tenten, you should not speak ill of your teammate. We are a team now and must work together as a team should. Spouted Lee excitedly. I don't have a problem working together, but I know for a fact that he does. What about your sensei? Asked Naruto. Guy sensei is the greatest, Yash. Shouted Lee at the top of his lungs. Now you cut that out. Shouted Tenten. The guy was a freak. He wears this horrible green jumpsuit. He's always shouting weird things about the flames of youth, and his eyebrows are bushier than Lee's. But I thought he looked cool, was Lee's naive response. Everybody looked at him questionably for a second. Wait a minute, his name is Maeda Guy? At Tenten nod, Naruto said, I know him. What? Was the surprised response from everybody else. Well, it was a couple weeks back when I was training with Kakashi sensei. This guy looking just like Tenten described comes out of nowhere saying he has come to once again challenge his eternal rival. Kakashi sensei just pulls out his book and acts like he never even heard him. Then Guy is all, oh Kakashi, you and your too cool act. The next thing I know, they're thumb wrestling. Kakashi wins and Guy is running away backwards while crouching. I was laughing so hard I think I passed out at some point. Naruto finished his story chuckling at the memory. Everybody else was laughing at the story except Lee, who didn't really understand what was so funny about it, and Shikamaru, who was too lazy to bother, though he did smile a little. Age 12, several weeks before graduation. Is everything set and ready to go? Naruto asked of his sister. We're good to go, Ruto. This is going to be good, said Naruto with a huge smile on her face. Naruto and Naruto had just spent the last couple of hours setting up pranks all over Konoha. It was only a matter of time before the sun rose and the fun began. Iruka had just had his morning coffee and was on his way out the door when he noticed too late that there was a tag on his door. The tag exploded, heavy cream bombarded his face and torso, causing him to backpedal in shock. This in turn triggered another trap as a bucket fell from the ceiling, drenching him in water and washing away most of the cream. Iruka stood there for a second as he processed what just happened. Then at the top of his lungs Iruka shouted, Uzumaki's. Iruka had actually gotten off pretty light as some people found themselves to be covered from head to toe in fluorescent orange paint. Or even to find that it was inexplicably snowing in their house. The granddaddy of them all was when people realized that the Hokage monument had been graffiti. The twins were currently on the run as several shinobi were on their tail, many of them showing signs that they had run into one of their traps. But it was the twins leading the chase, and that can be a dangerous thing, testament by the few shinobi who had fallen into the unseen pit. The chase went on for several long minutes, with the chasing nins becoming more and more cautious as they lost several of their men to knockout gas, hidden rope traps, and at one point a giant snowball. The twins eventually gave their pursuers the slip and rejoiced in evading capture. Though their joy was short-lived as they saw both Iruka-sensei and Hitomi Nichan waiting for them. It was Naruto who said what didn't really need to be said, "We're in trouble, aren't we?" Both Iruka and Hitomi with their arms crossed simply nodded at Naruto's question. "It was worth it," shouted Naruto with Naruto nodding his head in agreement. Age 12 graduation day. Having been raised by Hitomi Karen, and given the assistance of their various friends, it goes without saying that Naruto and Naruko passed their final exams. While they never made it past the top 10 ranking, they proved to everyone beyond a shadow of a doubt that they were not the dead last losers they were once touted to be. Now they sat in their classroom anxiously waiting to hear who they're going to be on a team with, as was everyone else. Iruka walked into the room, his eyes beaming with pride as they roamed over the assembled students and seemed to linger on two specific students. "First, I'd like to say that I'm very proud of all of you, and that you are shinobi of the leaf." Iruka went on into the obligatory speech of responsibilities to the leaf, and to look out for your fellow ninja before he finally got to the team assignment. Team 6 will be Haku, Uzumaki Naruko, and Aburame Shino. "Yes," shouted Naruko. "We're going to be on a team together, Nichan." Haku merely smiled happily, while Shino said nothing as he tried desperately to hide the blush forming on his face. Iruka continued as he said, "Your Jonin-sensei Hitomi Karen." Naruko and Haku's eyes bug at the realization, while Naruto grumbled about not being on the coolest team ever. Team 7 will consist of Uzumaki Naruto, Haruno Sakura. Both the blonde and pinkette perked up at that and smiled at each other. And Uchiha Sasuke. There were two thuds as two heads hit the desk. "Your Jonin-sensei will be Hitaki Kakashi." "Woohoo!" shouted Naruto. "Even with the teme, this is great." Sasuke's response was, "HNG. Ahem," said Iruka, in which Naruto calmed down. "Team 8 will be Hyuga Hinata, Inazuka Kiba, and Hiro. Your Jonin instructor will be Yuhi Kurenai. Team 10 shall be Yamanaka Ino, Nara Shikamaru, and Akamichi Choji. Your Jonin instructor is Sarutobi Asuma." Iruka went on calling out several more teams before once again stating how he was proud of everyone. Time passed and one by one Jonin came to claim their team, until there was only two teams left, Team 6 and Team 7. The twins and friends were expecting Kakashi to be late based on what Naruto told them, but they were wondering what was keeping Hitomi. Suddenly they heard a loud noise in the hallway as someone was coming their way. Hitomi burst into the room dragging Kakashi by his ear as she said, "You are going to show up at a decent time and properly train your team, or so help me all." "I'll." She trailed off as she thought about what she could do when an evil grin graced her face. "I'll burn your Icha Icha collection." The look in Kakashi's eye was one of pure terror as he nodded his head. "Team 6 follow me. I'll see you later, Naruto, Sakura." Team 7 was looking at Kakashi and then the door that Hitomi just went through, not sure what to make of the situation. Kakashi rubbed his ear as he said, "Man, that woman is scary." Naruto nodded his head, agreeing wholeheartedly. Naruto, Naruko, and Haku have all woken up at the crack of dawn preparing themselves for the final test to become genin. Naruko and Naruto were still fuming over the realization that the graduation exam they passed was in fact not the final test. That's not to say they didn't understand the reasoning of the graduation exam being meant to weed out the ones with potential to become genin. To paraphrase a quote they heard, "The road to becoming a ninja isn't meant to be easy." "Aren't you going to eat something, Naruto?" asked Haku. Seeing the blonde-hair boy ready to leave the house without eating was an odd occurrence. "Nah, Kakashi-sensei said we shouldn't eat anything, we might puke," said Naruto as he looked longingly at the ramen noodle Naruko was enjoying. Haku pondered on that for a second before saying, Don't you think that may have been a trick? Even if you puke, having some food in you will give you some much needed energy. Naruto stood dumb for a second with a look on his face that said, why didn't I think of that? Because thinking is not your forte, said Naruto as she mentally spoke to him. You're no genius yourself, you know, said Naruto as he snarked back to his sister. The twins glared at each other, but only for a moment, as their glare turned into a foxy grin. Good luck to you, both of you, said Naruto as he held a more serious look in his eyes but still wore his light-hearted smile. You too, Ruto, said Naruto with a similar look in her eyes. Haku merely nodded his head with a serene expression on his face. Naruto held out his arm fist forward as he said, by the end of the day we'll all be ninja of Konohagakure. The other two joined in as they placed their fist against Naruto, and they stay that way for a moment, rejoicing in the bond they shared with each other. Sasuke was busy grumbling and glaring at his teammates who were happily chatting away. Sasuke is never really in a good mood, and it was even worse today after learning that Naruto and Sakura had already ate and why. It galled him how he could be fooled by such an obvious trick, and yet these two managed to realize it. Naruto looked towards Sasuke and tossed him an apple, which Sasuke easily caught. Sasuke looked at the apple in his hand before saying, I don't need your charity, Uzumaki. Naruto just shook his head, exasperate, will you shut up and just eat the apple? Then ignored Sasuke as he returned to talking with Sakura. Sasuke stared at the apple. As much as he wanted to throw it away or even burn it, he knew he needed the energy, so very reluctantly he ate it. The trio had arrived at the designated spot early in the morning. Now it was nearing noon and they were getting impatient. That was when Kakashi finally appeared. What took you so long? Said Naruto. Didn't Hitomi Nichan warn you about being late? Kakashi quickly and nervously looked around before saying, it was for the test, I assure you. Now let's go to the location of the final test. What Kakashi didn't say was that he was watching them wait for him and saw the exchange between Sasuke and Naruto. He was proud of Naruto for putting aside his differences with Sasuke and helping him. While Sasuke seemed reluctant, he still ate the apple, and that meant he had the potential to become a better person. They arrived at Training Ground 7 and Kakashi placed a timer on one of the stumps. He stood in the center of the training grounds as he addressed his students. The final test is a survival exercise. He held up two bells connected to a string. Your objective is to retrieve one of these bells. If you manage to get a bell, then you pass. Kakashi-sensei, there are only two bells, said Sakura as she stated the obvious. That's right, the person who doesn't receive a bell will go back to the academy, said Kakashi with a slight touch of menace in his voice. You must take the bells before the timer runs out. That's noon. I suggest you come at me with intent to kill. They all had a tense look on their face. Naruto's finger twitched and Kakashi smiled, though no one could see it. Start, exclaimed Kakashi, and before the word was even finished the three shinobi to be were gone. Not bad, said Kakashi as he waited to see who would make the first move. Naruto and Sakura were hunkered down in the trees, keeping their voice low. It doesn't make any sense, said Sakura. What doesn't? Asked Naruto as he tried to get a handle on the situation. Why would he only have two bells when genin squads are always a four-man team, not three-man? Sakura explained. Naruto thought on that for a second before saying, deception. One of the key things about being a ninja is deception. He already tried to deceive us once, this could be another trick. Of course, said Sakura in realization. Why would he try to get us to believe only two of us can pass? Well, if only two of us could pass, I'll be desperate to get one of those bells. Oh, said Naruto as he too realized. Exactly, he's trying to tear us apart. He's a jonin and we're not even genin yet. There's no way we could take him by ourselves. We would need to work together if we even hope to get one of those bells, said Sakura as she laid it out. Then that means we're going to need Sasuke's help, said a suddenly despondent Naruto. We're going to need to work together with Sasuke if we are to be successful. I don't really have a problem with it, but he might. Look, you go talk to Sasuke and come up with a plan to get the bells from Kakashi-sensei. Why me? Asked Sakura, not really wanting anything to do with Sasuke. Because he's a lot more likely to listen to you than me. Sakura had to admit that was true. I'll be going out there keeping Kakashi-sensei busy. I'll leave you one of my clones so that I'll know what the plan is. Okay, good luck, Naruto, said Sakura as she bounded off to find her former crush. Naruto jumped out in front of his sensei, preparing to attack head-on. Kakashi shook his head and said, "Naruto, I thought I taught you better than this." Meanwhile, Sakura was trying to convince Sasuke that they had to work together. "Are you sure about this?" he asked in his usual superior way. Sakura, who was on the verge of causing him serious harm, said, "Of course I'm sure. Have you ever heard of a three-man genin squad?" Sasuke thought about it. He really didn't want anyone holding him back, but if it meant becoming a ninja he would do whatever it took. Fine, you got any idea how we're going to do it?" "I'm working on it," snapped Sakura. Naruto was using everything he learned up to this point to stay on a somewhat even footing with Kakashi, who wasn't even going all out but wasn't taking it as easy as one would expect. The sudden rush of memories from the clone he left with Sakura nearly cost him, as he was distracted enough to almost take an uppercut from Kakashi. Naruto then held his hands in his signature seals as he shouted, "Tagu Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." There was a big puff of smoke that cleared to reveal some 20 or so clones of Naruto. Kakashi was aware that Naruto could do this, but it still amazed him that he could make so many without breaking a sweat, while he could barely manage more than 5 without passing out. The army of clones attacked as one, distracting Kakashi from the fact that the real Naruto had slipped into the trees. He made easy work of the clones as he defeated most of them when he suddenly heard a great whooshing sound. He turned to see a great wall of flame rapidly approaching him. His visible eye bugged slightly as he narrowly managed to avoid it. He turned as he heard a rustle in trees to see another army of Narutos coming after him. What was surprising was the army of Sakura's and Sasuke's coming after him too. There were a lot of them, hundreds, probably more. Could Naruto really make this many clones, and what about the others? Perhaps they were henges of Naruto's clones. It only took him a moment to realize that these clones weren't fighting like Naruto. All they did was punch and kick in repetitive order. It only took him a second longer to realize that he was in a genjutsu, which he immediately released. As he awoken from the genjutsu, he saw Naruto and Sasuke both holding up a bell. Naruto had a big grin on his face while Sasuke wore a superior smirk. He was in that genjutsu for only a few seconds, but that was more than enough time. He looked to see Sakura standing next to Naruto, smiling brightly, though slightly tired from casting the genjutsu. "Well, I must say I'm curious how you managed to achieve this," said Kakashi. "Well, we realized that there's no way we would be able to beat you by ourselves, so we worked together and came up with a plan. I distracted you while Sakura and Sasuke got ready. Then Sasuke used his Kaden Gokakyu no Jutsu and I used my Futon Daitopa to enhance it. This was to keep you from realizing that Sakura had placed a genjutsu on you," said Naruto as he proudly explained how they got the better of their sensei. "I see," said Kakashi noncommittally. "You know there are only 2 bells and yet you all decided to work together for them," stated Kakashi as they all nodded their head. "I'm proud to say that you all pass." Naruto and Sakura were jumping around in joy, shouting about how they finally passed. Sasuke merely stood as his smirk grew slightly broader, thinking about how he was one step closer to his goal. After Kakashi got them to settle down, he went on. "You see, in the ninja world, those who break the rules are scum. But those who betray their teammates are even lower than scum. The fact that you managed to grasp the purpose of this test makes me proud to call you my students. From now on you are shinobi of Konoha and you must learn to depend on each other as teammates. That is the purpose of this test. If you can't grasp the concept of teamwork, then you aren't meant to be a Konoha shinobi." Dismissed. The now officially rookie genins went their separate ways, rejoicing in becoming ninjas but also with Kakashi's words on their minds. Hitomi studied her students as they stood before her ready and willing to become ninjas. The purpose of the final test was to see if the genin had what it took to work as a team. Naruto and Haku worked well together, and teamwork was an essential skill for the Abarames concerning their particular skill set. All in all, she wasn't worried about how well they would handle teamwork. Instead, she wanted to see what they were made of and push them to their limits. So for a while she struggled to come up with a test that would both test their teamwork and push their limits. Before the trio had any time to wonder what was expected of them, Hitomi had quickly shackled Shino's left arm to Naruto's right and Haku's right arm to Naruto's left. The 3 were surprised to see that they were stuck together by braces with a foot and a half cord. "Your objective is to get this key," Hitomi stated as she referred to the key that hung around her neck like a necklace. If you wish to get this key, then you are going to have to work together. You are allowed to use any means at your disposal except cage buncheons. She this while giving Naruto a pointed look. Naruto merely grumbled at not being able to use her favorite jutsu. I won't attack you, but I'm not going to make it easy for you either. Good luck, your time starts now. She jumped away after saying start, and due to ingrained reflex the trio made to follow, but tripped over each other instead. It would seem that this is going to be more difficult than anticipated. Why? Because we are not used to each other's movements and would cause each other problems, stated Shino in his usual logical manner, despite trying to hide the developing blush from being so close to Naruto. Then what are we going to do? We only got till noon to find her, and that's not a lot of time, said Naruto, who was on the verge of panic. I have placed one of my Kakaichu on her before she took off, so we have the capabilities to track her, said Shino. If we have the capabilities of tracking her with little effort, then we should sacrifice some time in order to move as one. Or at least move without tripping over each other, said Haku. That seems like a logical solution, stated Shino. Having a plan, the three practiced for nearly an hour, getting used to each other's movements. They ran, jumped, and attacked, all while being mindful of the person next to them. Finally they reached a point where they felt they were passable, as trying for perfection would take weeks. Alright Shino, point the way, said Naruto as she took charge. Shino indicated the direction they should travel, and as nearly one body they jumped into the trees and took off. It wasn't long before they located their sensei standing in a small clearing, standing as still as a statue. They kept themselves hidden in the trees, not wanting to reveal themselves just yet. Remember to stick to the plan, said Haku, more for Naruto's sake. Haku made a single hand sign indicating he was using his height and ability. Haku was mostly self-taught in the use of his Kekkei Genkei, but was helped by what Hitomi and the Hokage could dig up on his clan. He was able to draw out just enough moisture in the air to form several senbons surrounding the clearing. This was to keep the target from knowing their precise location, not that they thought it would help against a Jonin. Haku exercised his power and threw the senbons to the target. Upon hitting the target, the figure in the clearing poofed, clearly turning out to be a log. A kawarimi, as we suspected, said Shino. There was a poof of smoke behind them, and there was Hitomi smiling as she said, I was wondering when you guys was going to get here. Before Hitomi was even done with that sentence, Naruto had turned her head in order to get a better view of her Nichan. Barely moving herself, Naruto's chain snaked around her and shot towards Hitomi. Naruto had become so sufficient with her kunai and chain that she even learned how to manipulate it with her chakra. She wasn't as good as a puppeteer, but she could certainly catch someone off guard. Hitomi was indeed caught off guard as she narrowly avoided the kunai edge of the chain. Shino then put in his due as he sent out a volley of Kakaichu. Not wanting to get caught in that swarm, Hitomi quickly made distance between them. What wasn't apparent until it was too late was that the Kakaichu weren't going after her, but the key that had fallen from her neck after Naruto had cut it with the chain. After the insects had returned the key, the trio quickly unlocked themselves and assumed a fighting stance in case Hitomi had another surprise for them. Hitomi was clapping as she walked closer to her team and said, I gotta say, y'all surprised me. I was expecting to give y'all the run around for quite a bit longer. But y'all managed to anticipate each other's movements, came up with a plan, and executed it flawlessly. There's nothing else I can say but congratulations, you all pass. Yahoo! Shouted Naruto as she jumped for joy. Haku just chuckled at Naruto's action and happy that she was one step closer to her dream. Shino was yet again trying to hide the developing blush as he turned away from the scene Naruto was making. Hitomi smiled, knowing that from now on things was only going to get harder, but content to letting them have their moment. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.